I am a white, middle-aged woman, wavy brown chin-length hair. I am wearing a yellow sweater and a white top. A little something about myself. I came to Vista Center when I was working as the training manager for a corporation in the Bay Area. When I turned to Vista Center, they essentially retooled me and provided me with support so that I could continue my work in the corporation. Now I am the Director of Community and Corporate Relations for Vista Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. We are here in Menlo Park, a few miles away from Palo Alto, where I work. We're seated at a wood table. There is French doors looking out on a beautiful fall garden. And sitting next to me is my co-host, John Giddings. Can you say hello, John?
Hello, Alice. It's great to be here with you today and co-host the 4th annual SiteTech Global. I've been a huge fan of this event from the start, and I've worked as a volunteer moderator in past years. By way of description of me, I'm a middle-aged guy with short brown hair. I'm wearing a black blazer and a light blue shirt.
So before we get started, I want to remind everyone that SiteTech Global is a production of Vista Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. The proceeds for this event not only support this amazing conference, but it also sustains our programs and services for Vista Center. Before we get started, we'd like to give you a quick tour of the platform for this event. John, can you walk us through the features of the conference platform?
Of course. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with past SiteTech Global events, let me give you the mini tour of how the event platform and how to enjoy the show. First of all, please be aware that there is no login to have to join the show. All you have to do is land on this web page and you have full access. We ask people to register so that we can keep in touch, but anyone can join the event without registering. So please feel free to share this link now with your friends, even if they do not register. Now, if you're listening to me now, you are on the main web page of our SiteTech Global event. The top half of the page has a YouTube video player, which is where I am appearing. Below the player is the part of the agenda relevant to the current session, plus the upcoming session. Everything here in the YouTube player is pre-recorded, including me. So I'm very much present here, but I'm not actually here, if you know what I mean. After the event, everything that appears in the YouTube player will be available on demand in the YouTube SiteTech Global channel. We will also add captions to those videos, and we'll send an email to registered folks when they are ready. The second page associated with the event is the agenda page, which you can access from links on this page as well as from the site's top navigation on any page. On the agenda page, you will find the complete lineup of the main stage sessions with links that bring you back here. You will also find links to the live Ask Me Anything breakout sessions, which will take you to the Zoom webinars dedicated to each breakout session. There's a Zoom link to join the breakout associated with each breakout session, and it will take you to a Zoom window that will ask you for your name before you join the Zoom session. We designed the agenda page so that screen readers can easily tab up and down the page to find the headlines, descriptions, and find links. We hope this works well for screen reader users. On the agenda page, we will also encounter links labeled Chat associated with each agenda item as well as here on this page. The chat takes you to one unified chat feed, which is its own page. The chat is provided by the tech company Slido. It's straightforward to use. We suggest that you open it in a separate tab and you can follow along while you're watching the main stage sessions. Now that we've cleared all that up, let's get on with SiteTech Global. Back to you, Alice.
Thank you, John, for that super helpful rundown about the platform. So let's begin with today. Our first session is entitled Seeing AI Meets Generative AI, a View from Microsoft. So John, can you cue this one up for us?
Sure. We're very happy to welcome back to SiteTech Global Microsoft Saqib Sheikh, who is the co-founder of the Seeing AI app and spoke at the first 2 SiteTech Global events. Seeing AI was one of the first deployments of AI computer vision in a mobile app to help blind users, quote, narrate the world around you, and quote by using AI to describe nearby people, text, and objects. Saqib's employer, Microsoft, is the leading investor in OpenAI, the organization that created the groundbreaking ChatGPT, a type of AI called generative because of its ability to generate novel content in response to questions. Today, Seeing AI can tell you there is a chair in the room because it is trained to identify a chair. With ChatGPT, Seeing AI might be able to answer a random question it was not specifically trained for, such as, is there a cat in the room? The answers ChatGPT provides can be wondrously correct or wildly off-base hallucinations in the lingo of AI specialists. Moderating our chat today with Saqib is Devin Coldway, who is an editor at TechCrunch, the startup media company and a frequent writer about assistive tech.
Okay, take it away, Devin.
Seeing AI meets generative AI, the view from Microsoft. Speakers, Saqib Sheikh, co-founder of Seeing AI, Microsoft. Moderator, Devin Coldaway, writer and photographer, TechCrunch.
Thanks, Alice. And yeah, I'm happy to be here at SciTech Global. Saqib, thanks for joining me here today. Since we last talked, AI has become much more prominent in the tech world, though not necessarily all in ways that contribute to accessibility. Maybe you can tell me first what you're working on and what you've worked on, and then maybe you can tell me what you think are the more interesting aspects of the new AI ecosystem that we're all taking part in right now.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, as you say, it's an incredibly exciting time, especially when you think about AI accessibility. So at Microsoft, I lead the Seeing AI team, where we look at emerging technologies and how we leverage these to empower people with disabilities, especially people who are blind or have low vision, in their everyday lives. And we've been doing this for a number of years. We made an app which seems to be pretty popular, but as we look at the latest generation of AI, a lot of those early visions and ideas that we had all those years ago, it really feels like we've taken this big step forward as an industry towards realizing that. So I remember when I started this a few years back, I would think of, could AI be like a sighted guide, someone who knows you as a human, who understands the visual world and can fill in that gap by describing what's around you at the right time, and maybe you could have a conversation with them. And yeah, like you said, AI, it's come a long way this past year, and we're busy building towards that future.
It feels like you sort of touched on this, but it feels like there's a very stark difference, though, between a technology like ChatGPT, which we're all now familiar with, and how it can be useful to a blind or low vision person, and technology like Seeing AI, which is really designed from the ground up for specific needs. As someone who both builds and uses these tools, can you tell me why that difference is important?
So I think whenever you think about developing these kind of technologies, it's, nothing about us without us. So when you build with the community, as we do with Seeing AI, then you can have these really rich natural experiences tailor-made for this community. So ChatGPT, incredibly useful for someone who's blind. Same with all the other Microsoft Copilot products which are coming out. With Seeing AI, we're all focused in on what can you do through the power of your smartphone camera and the AI based on that. So it's very much about, okay, what can the camera see? What can it tell you? And increasingly, what could you ask of it? So it's chat of a different sort.
So maybe you can tell us a little about what the latest sort of frontiers are on that side, on the side that you're working on. Like, what are the latest developments in what you can ask about an image, what you can extract from an image, and the kind of the utility that you can get out of that?
Yeah, so with this next generation of what we call generative AI, it means we can leverage these large models, which can give us so much richer information. Up till now, we've been able to give you descriptions of an image, which could be a sentence. And it might, for example, tell you that it's a man and a boy in a park. But now we can have way richer descriptions that might be, a paragraph or multiple paragraphs in some cases, which can go into the detail about, okay, here's a man and this is what he's wearing, and this is more about what he's doing, and this is the boy, and there's trees of this sort in the background, and oh, there's this visible as well, and there's mountains further in the background. And it's a level of detail that I, as a blind person, never knew existed, let alone had access to. And I do remember the first time I encountered this kind of description, I was just, blown away. It's like a whole new frontier. And then that's the beginning. Like when you're a creator, innovation keeps going, and it's like, okay, this is what we have now, but I can't imagine where it's going to go next. So yeah, that's probably the biggest step forward. But then you mentioned also this idea of, can we now talk to our smartphone, whether it's a photo or in the future a video, and get even more information? So maybe it can have all this information about the world, but now it can be a two-way conversation. So you can pick out the things that are important to you in this moment in time. Sometimes it's easier to show than tell. So here's a picture that I took with my son when we were in the aquarium. And you can see a description, how rich it is, and also how you can ask questions about it.
What do the starfish look like?
The starfish in the image have various appearances. Some are bright orange with long, slender arms, while others are larger with a more robust structure and a mottled pattern of orange, brown, and white. There is also a starfish with a pinkish red color and a bumpy texture on its surface. They are all submerged in water.
How many starfish are there?
There are at least 15 starfish visible in the image.
Tell me more about the pink starfish.
The pink starfish in the image has a textured surface covered in numerous small, rounded protrusions. It is located towards the bottom left of the image, partially overlapping with an orange starfish. The pink starfish has 5 arms, typical of starfish, and is surrounded by various other starfish and sea creatures in different colors and sizes.
And speaking of what's important to you at this moment in time, I know that Seeing AI has sort of built up into a collection of specialized models, and this one is, specifically for navigating a room, or this one is specifically for identifying a label, these kind of everyday tasks. Is that model of like having these different specialized models going to stay important, you think?
I think it's going to be a hybrid approach. You have these large models, which are by their nature slower, but incredibly powerful. But then we have developed over time interesting user experiences to work in real time to help you line up a good photo, or to tell you things that you need to know in milliseconds, not seconds. And that's going to remain increasingly important. But then it's going to be a hybrid approach where those things are paired with the rich descriptions, the Q&A conversation, etc., that the large models will give us. And again, that's going to change, because I say all this and it's really just a moment in time. Everything is probably going to become faster, more powerful, and so forth, as is the way with our industry. And that's what makes it so exciting.
I'm curious, you were describing this, and I was the new being able to describe things with much more detail. I'm wondering how that might work in media, TV, and movies, paintings. There's so much more detail there that isn't always hit on in the like audio descriptions or the scene descriptions. It seems like it'd be so cool to be able to pause the video or whatever and say like, oh, well, what's going on right now? Where is the character standing? What does the landscape look like? Like my mind is just like fizzing with the possibilities for this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Like at Microsoft, there's this term co-pilot, and this idea that you'll have an AI to assist you with every app that you use or every product. And I sometimes say that Seeing AI, for someone who's blind, Seeing AI is your co-pilot for life. So if you're watching a movie, I imagine, and we have, we're busy prototyping in the lab, but I imagine that could we describe the video that you're watching? When you're browsing the web, what does it mean for a blind person to have help with a web page or completing whatever task they're doing in whatever app they're doing on the computer? So spanning media, digital life, maybe even games one day, and of course the physical world. So yeah, I think there's so much possibilities here, and combining all the different bits of AI that we have, whether that be speech or vision or understanding text, I just think all of this is going to come together. And of course, this is not next month, probably not even next year, but things are moving so fast at the moment, and we're really re-examining what's possible. There's all these things which we decided, oh, that's years away, we're not doing that, which we have to now re-examine and think, what if we could?
It is a sort of a hopeful moment, but there's also new risks, right? Like this is one of the most prominent risks that we've encountered with generative AI is obviously it kind of approximates knowledge rather than repeating it, or it may hallucinate details in a scene. It didn't in any of the things that I've seen describing the scenes, but there's always that risk. Are there new risks and tensions being introduced by the inclusion of generative AI or large language models in the sort of accessibility world here?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's always been true that AI, by definition, is sort of this probabilistic view of the world. And that's even more true of generative AI. I think one of the challenges is that when it's wrong, it's very, very confidently and convincingly wrong. And that's why we're being a bit cautious. We're developing with the community. So we have a bunch of testers who are working with us to make sure that these solutions work in all different scenarios for different types of people. But we do find hallucinations to be a problem, and we're figuring out the workarounds and so forth so that we can have, even if it's a bit less capable, we have more reliable solutions. And yeah, answering questions about, if you're asking open-ended questions, that definitely matters because you're relying on the AI and you want it to be robust and reliable, or to tell you accurately when it doesn't know.
Yeah. And maybe we can go a little further onto the side of working with the community. One of the first things you told me in this interview just now was nothing about us without us. That's obviously a foundational aspect of developing with the accessibility community and for all different abilities and disabilities. And it's how do you do that when? Well, maybe you can tell us about your model for working with the community first, and then we can talk about how that might change when you're working with other models or other companies.
Yeah, so I often think that, we are this bridge. We talk to the people who are blind or have low vision and the people who we wish to serve on the one side. And then we're talking to scientists, researchers, external companies, academia on the other hand. And then thinking, okay, we have these emerging technologies, these new techniques, new models, but it's not about the technology, it's about the needs of the individual. What are the challenges and how do we bring that technology to bear? So that's, the early ideation or development stage. But then as you get to the more polished stage, then it's working with people so that we can identify the issues, understand, is this really solving the user need we set out to solve? And, where are the potential risks and pitfalls, and make sure we catch them early on so we can find new solutions and new workarounds.
And is that something that you think, are other companies doing that adequately? Like, OpenAI seems like a bunch of very smart people, but it's not exactly, ChatGPT wasn't built specifically with the blind and low vision community in mind, even though it's of course very useful to everybody. Do you think that that's something that needs to be worked on, not just by OpenAI, but by anybody who is pursuing AI as a general purpose technology?
I think, human-centered solutions are key, and as an industry, we've come a long way in understanding that. I would, draw this distinction in a way between a platform and an experience. Much of what a platform company does is produce building blocks, which other people are going to build experiences out of. And at some point, a platform could, in theory, be for absolutely everyone. And then the experience, it could be for everyone, but it could be like Seeing AI, very targeted. So I think there's that aspect where when you're building the experience, that's the point that you really need to make sure it is going to serve your audience well. But then, if there are products at Microsoft and elsewhere where everyone is your audience, and that's where the good practices of inclusive design come in, making sure that you're testing with a diverse audience that represents the breadth of people and you don't exclude anyone by accident.
You mentioned when we were talking before how obviously these large language models are extremely smart, but they are also primarily text-based, and they're working on the multimodal side of things. But you mentioned that GPT-4 can do a lot of things, but it can't really help you navigate a subway station or get around, find a shop in a mall or identify the ingredients of a can of soup or something like that. Are these always going to need a seeing AI type solution, or do you think that the general models will sort of reach out and subsume these use cases as well?
So now we do have the multimodal GPT amongst other models and other solutions, but yeah, I got to say, GPT's multimodal capabilities are very impressive. I still think we need faster models and more specialized models as well, but maybe over time, I do imagine that there'll be other similar multimodal models, which maybe some will run on device and so on and so forth. So things are going to change. But at the end of the day, the way you stitch together the models, the way you fine-tune the models or prompt the models, that's what's going to make the difference. Because like you say, there might come a day when the AI can help you navigate and find the shop, find the platform and the subway station. We're really not there now, partly because of the technical limitations of these models, and partly because there's one thing to tell you what's there. It's quite another to have the end-to-end interactive real-time experience that's not going to distract you from, navigating with all your other capabilities. So I'm cautious to say, it's not possible today, but who knows what's possible even in a few months or a year or two.
Yeah, it's developing so fast. It's almost scary. It's not that scary because the capabilities are so interesting and so helpful. It's so thinking like, oh, well, we can't do that today. It's just like wait a couple of months and there'll be a new paper, there'll be a new model. Obviously, you mentioned this before. Microsoft is hugely in this space. They're partnering with OpenAI. They're doing their own stuff. The co-pilots and stuff, those are all coming out they're going to be in Windows, they're going to be in Office, they're going to be in all these productivity things. I think it's interesting because all users will benefit from this. If you want to use this, it could be useful. But people who have trouble interacting with the visual GUI in the first place, where there's insufficient accessibility tools to use them, it feels like they'll have like a supercharged situation. I'm hoping that that's the case anyway. How do you see that playing out? And is there any particular sort of capability you're looking forward to in the sort of co-pilot space?
Yeah, and this is, again, we're still relatively early on in this stage of co-pilots. But as someone who's blind, I'm very excited by the possibility of having a co-pilot that might tell me, okay, this document I've written, is it formatted well? And if it has knowledge of the visual appearance, then could it do that? And these are just all ideas. I'm not saying that it's something that's possible today, but or if you have huge spreadsheets with loads of data, can we get your co-pilot to help you analyze all the data or spot the trends or so forth, or even to generate content, so generating images or reports, these are things that everyone is going to be using, but I think for people with disabilities, there will be unique types of tasks which will be really helped by having your personal co-pilot to help you accomplish these tasks. And this is kind of cool because when you have one user interface, there's this assumption that the designer, the developer of the interface knew exactly how everyone wants to use their product.
Mm-hmm.
But in this AI world, you can actually have different types of people, all with different needs, different styles of using the system, and the AI can answer their questions and provide the information in whatever way is right for them. And today the fashionable way of doing that is via this chat interface. Who knows what it'll be tomorrow?
Yeah, truly nobody does.
For sure.
But of course, it has to be guided, as you mentioned before, it has to be guided by the users and by the community and by feedback. Do you as an early user of it, do you have any feedback on it, and do you expect that it will be guided by or sort of supercharged itself by the feedback from blind and low vision users?
Yeah, I absolutely hope so. So I'm enjoying it. I'm still at the stage where I'm exploring what's possible, and I provide my feedback. But as a group, as a community, I'm sure we will have many tips and tricks and ideas for each other of how to use the systems, but then also for the creators, like Microsoft, about that will influence the next generation.
So tell me, we've talked a lot about what we're hopeful about. Maybe you can get a little bit into what you feel most skeptical about, the claims or the tools that you think may or may not that may not live up to the promises. Is there anything in particular that you're worried about or more skeptical about?
I'm a little bit skeptical of everything I got to say because there's almost so much hyperbole at the moment, and it's like, wow, AI is going to change everything. And I meet scientists who maybe a year ago were hard at work on this model, that technique, and now they're like, oh, computer vision, it's a solved problem. I'm like, it's not. Like, if I as a blind person if I could list you the first 10 things I do in my day, and I can think of dozens of ways to make each and every one of those more productive and better. And are we going to say these large models are going to solve everything? Are we saying, oh, we're approaching AGI, artificial general intelligence, and then it's just going to solve everything? No. I still feel we're a really long way off. So on the one hand, I'm so optimistic, but on the other hand, and it's just my lived experience, there are, of course, so many users in the world with their own experiences. But if I just pick the example of, I get out of the Uber and now I'm going to try and find the door to the building, and now I'm going to find my way to the cafe and join the end of the queue and know what to order, and go and take my tray and find an empty table with my friend and say hi. Yeah, is AI there today? It can probably do each of the building blocks. But until we get to this sort of AGI future, which I think is much hyped, and we're probably still a ways away, there's still a lot to be done. So I am very optimistic, but skeptical of some of the hype.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Another thing, which is also, we want to make equity is important. We're going to make sure that not everyone has access to super fast internet and the latest AI and the latest everything. We want to make sure, and this has been a focus for us over this past year as well, that just the basics of being able to read well or recognize products and all those things are done even better than before. And then that we can get this out to more people. So there's so many people all around the world, and we'd love to bring generative AI to everyone. But even if we can bring some subset of this, I think we could help so many people in their daily lives. So just a few days ago, we launched Seeing AI on Android, and I'm very excited to think how that can get out onto much, much cheaper phones. And in the upcoming weeks, and we're going to be launching in a whole bunch of new languages to about 36, I believe. So that's the other side of what I'm doing. That thinking about, okay, let's really push the edge of what's possible, but then let's scale that benefit out to help as many people as possible. So it's not so much that I'm skeptical of all the amazing new stuff, but it is that I want to make sure it's available to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. That equity piece is super important. The languages, like I think you mentioned something like 36 languages, like that expands the scope to so many people who I'm sure would love to use the app or, use it in certain situations and can't because they're just like, well, I mean, because I speak Portuguese, that's just how it is. And now like it's available. I don't know if it's available in Portuguese, but hopefully it will be soon. But it's like that is such an expansion. It doesn't have to, like you said, you don't have to push at the very frontiers to enable more and more people. I saw a wonderful a model that was being done by some Swiss students. Literally all it does was when you walk into a room, it helps you find an empty chair. There's no other task. And it's just like, it's such a simple thing, but like, of course, anybody should be able to do that. And like they were just like, well, this is a common problem. Let's solve that. We don't need to worry about the cutting edge stuff. Let's just see if we can make everyday tasks easier. So we only have about a minute left. I'm curious. There's sort of one last thing I wanted to ask you about self-driving cars. This is just one of these areas that I think is just like a cutting edge technology, super interesting, super like focused on accessibility in a way, but there's been a lot of movement on it recently, and I'm curious where you think we're going with this.
I'm just going to say yes, please. I really want this to happen, and in the same way that the work we do on Seeing AI, I definitely want that AI sighted companion as I'm walking around. Yeah, then I want to get in a self-driving car and be taken across town too.
And then you get out and do all the things that you mentioned. All the pieces will fit together. I think it's a wonderful vision, and I think that you are accomplishing it with Seeing AI with the help of all these other technologies. Anything else? We've only just got a few seconds left, but is there anything else you want to talk about that's coming out in the next week or two?
No, it's really just we're building this one step at a time. And I think it's the perfect time. AI is getting better. We've been thinking about wearables for years now, and wearables are entering the mainstream now. Personalization really helps have human-centric AI. You put all this together, and this idea of the AI that just describes the world for you, we're really closer than ever before. It's an exciting time, and yeah, we'd love to hear from anyone. seeingai@microsoft.com.
Well, thank you very much. With that, I think we can wrap it up. Thank you as always.
Thank you so much.
That was a fascinating chat, Sakib and Devin. I personally love the Seeing AI app. Our next session is entitled, Why Did the AI Cross the Street? The OKO app story. That's an interesting headline. John, could you tell us more?
Sure. Well, I suppose another answer to the question in the title, why did the AI cross the street, might be because it could. This session is all about the fascinating new app called OKO that helps with one of the toughest challenges facing blind people when they are navigating independently, crossing a busy intersection with signals. A small team of AI engineers at the startup IS in Belgium took on that challenge and created the OKO app, which uses computer-based AI to read the signals and suggest when it is safe to cross. Here to chat with one of the IS founders, Michael Jensen, is Brandon Biggs, engineer at the Smith Ketterwell Eyes Research Institute, PhD student at the Georgia Institute of Technology, CFO at Sonia Briggs Educational Services, and the CEO of XR Navigation. Over to you, Brandon.
Why did the AI cross the street? The OKO app story. Speakers, Michael Jansen, co-founder and CEO, Eyes. Moderator, Brandon Biggs, engineer, Smith Kettlewell Eye Research Institute.
Thank you, Alice. It's great to be here at SiteTech Global. I am here with Michael Jansen, who is the co-founder of the company Eyes that creates the app to help blind pedestrians cross the street. It's called OCO. Thank you for being here, Michael. And I'm curious, what inspired you to make OCO?
Yeah, thanks for that kind introduction, Brandon. And it's a great pleasure to be on SciTech Global. So to start off with, like, how we got inspired, basically I'm Belgian, originally born in Antwerp, in a beautiful town, but we moved to the States about 6 months now, to New York. And so all the way 2.5 years ago, we started in Antwerp due to the fact that we got inspired by a family friend. He's actually a friend of my parents. Because fun fact, one of my 2 co-founders is also my brother. And so the second co-founder is one of my best friends from high school. And so the 3 of us were all AI engineers. So we did study computer science and then specialized in artificial intelligence, specifically in computer vision, which of course I'll talk more talking about the OCO app. But so 2 or almost 3 years now, we were talking a lot with our blind family friend named Kenny. And so we got inspired by his challenges as a blind person navigating the streets in Antwerp. And so we thought, as computer scientists, like, hey, there are self-driving cars like Teslas or any other brand out there. They're using cameras to interpret the visual surrounding and then do certain magic to it. And so we kind of figured out, like, if a self-driving car will be able to drive autonomously on a highway for like 60 miles an hour, why can't we use that same technology, which is computer vision, and then apply that to help blind and low vision pedestrians navigate sidewalks, crosswalks at 2-3 miles an hour? So that's actually how we got inspired. And of course, how we like incorporated our eyes company.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Kenny, for inspiring this. And yeah, I definitely want to be using the Tesla technology for the self-driving mode. So why exactly would I want to use OCO as a blind person? What can it do for me?
Yeah, great question. So maybe a bit of a backstory there as well. So originally we kind of figured quickly that a lot of cities all over the world don't have a lot of accessibility features in place when you're talking about pedestrian signalized intersections. So here in the US, it's called an APS, or accessible pedestrian signal. And I would say on average throughout the world, 5, 10, 15% of all intersections are made audible or vibro-tactile to inform whether the walk sign is on or the don't walk sign is on. And so basically to help them on all the intersections, so on all the 100% of signalized intersections, we wanted to develop an application, which of course is called OCO. And so what we do is we use your smartphone camera and artificial intelligence to visually interpret whether the walk sign is on or the don't walk sign. And similarly to an APS, we also produce an audible cue, a vibro-tactile cue, and even more so, we provide also a visual feedback. So people with low vision can look at their screen to interpret whether the walk sign is on or the don't walk sign is on. And so we not only detect whether that walk sign or don't walk sign is on, but what's interesting as well, and that's something that we figured more here in the United States, is that a lot of blind and low vision pedestrians often veer off into traffic, left or right. And so what we found is that a lot of people use our app as well to stay on track while they're either crossing the street or getting oriented towards that pedestrian signal. So imagine your parallel street is on the right. People start scanning away from the intersection, holding their phone at chest level. And while they're scanning towards that parallel street, you at some point will find the light across the street, and hence will immediately produce an audible or vibration feedback to let you know this is the direction where that pedestrian signal is and what is the status of that signal. And so the veering off ultimately comes in when people continue to hold their phone while crossing the street. The moment that you're veering off, given that we are using the camera to detect the signal, when you're veering off, the camera won't longer see that light, and hence the feedback automatically drops, which for them is then an indication, hey, I'm veering off. And again, you should rotate your upper body or your complete body together with your phone to get back on track. And there's a good saying, actually, what we always like to say, if you're stopped hearing, you're veering. So that's always to get quite easily back on track.
That's awesome. That's a great catchy phrase there. if you stop hearing, you're veering. That's awesome. Well, how can I trust that Oko is telling me the right information? Because I know that machine learning often doesn't get like 100% accuracy on things. How can I trust that it's giving me the correct information and that it's not giving me false positive information, telling me that the street light's on and it's really not?
Yeah, great question. Maybe it's a good first side note. Let's say our technology, of course, is always an assistive technology, so it should always be used in addition to orientation and mobility, or gain, or your guide dog, or a combination of all. So it's not that we're replacing all of these; we're just mere an extra tool in your toolbox that will make you more comfortable or more independent to get across the street. And so, talking about it more about like safety aspects. So all the way in the beginning, it took us, I think, almost 9 months of development before we initially released the first Oko version back in Belgium. And so what's necessary for our AI is a lot of data of pedestrian signals, but also negative examples like car signals, because we don't support those car signals. And so by aggregating all those specific images, and also in different weather and light conditions, so during the day, during snow. And I mean, it's also pretty funny because it was pretty easy for us all the way in the beginning to collect that data on ourselves, because we as pedestrians could just travel everywhere. And we also encouraged our family back in the day to, hey, you're going to Paris, can you shoot some videos of pedestrian signals in Paris? Because ultimately, pedestrian signals visually are different from one country to another. So taking all these things into consideration, the biggest necessity of our application was just data. So it took us a while to reach a certain level of accuracy, let's say. And that was also one of the reasons why it took a while to make the jump to the US, because the lights are totally different. Here in the US, you have a white walking person to indicate walk and a red hand to indicate don't walk. And so in Belgium, or most generally Europe, you have a green walking man and a red walking man. So it's totally different, and also just environments are different. Like compare New York to Miami, for example, it's totally different. So trying to capture also data in any other city was also pretty necessary. And so on the, what is it now, 1.5 million streets that we've already helped people cross with Oko, our AI has never made a mistake, because we also have a fallback mechanism in place where if you think about AI, there's just an image that comes in, you predict a certain thing, and then there's a certain output. But we don't necessarily just immediately provide that output to the end user. We have some sort of like majority voting mechanism in place as well, to always ensure that we're only if we're highly confident that we push that feedback, whether it's audible or vibration. But again, of course, you should always use that feedback that you're getting from our app, in addition to confirming with your both ears or other skills that you can cross the street.
Got it. That's awesome. So I would probably pretty much use this app when there's no cars around, and it's that horrible time when there's nobody giving me parallel traffic, and I need to cross the street.
Yeah,
this
exactly. Yeah, especially in those situations where there's no surge of traffic, it's very helpful. But a lot of people also use it even though there's surge of traffic. Again, an extra confirmation that you're good to go. Because of course, a lot of intersections are changing these days. One specific thing is a lead pedestrian interval, where pedestrian signals get a 5 to 7 second head start. So a lot of people actually value that you can use our app to immediately get that walk sign in and make advantage of that 5-7 seconds head start. So that's just one example, but I agree.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, that makes me feel a lot better, knowing that I out of the 1.5 million streets, you haven't had any problems. That's pretty confident boosting. Awesome. Well, I don't know about you, but when I was born, I only had 2 hands, and one hand's holding my cane and the other hand is holding something else. I guess, can you use Oko without hands? So I'm going to the grocery store or something. Yeah.
A lot of people always say like I need to have like a third hand, and I agree, of course. But what works pretty well for a lot of people is using a certain lanyard or a pouch. And of course, they come in many formats, given an iPhone is or a smartphone is always a bit different. So you can quite easily buy whatever suits your needs, of course, on any other store. So that basically the phone is hanging around your neck or even around your wrists or even around your belt. We've seen some pretty crazy devices, and some people actually make their own lanyard to their specific situation, let's say. So I think a lot of people use it like that as well. So whenever the phone is hanging around your neck, you can basically say, hey, Siri, open Oko. And that's the great thing about our app. The moment that you come into it, there's no real action required. So it immediately is looking for those pedestrian signals for you. And that's the great thing about like using that in a hands-free approach. But of course, it again depends on your preference, whether you would like to hold it yourself or the lanyard is holding it. And fun fact, actually, we pretty recently, like 1.5 weeks ago, we got our own branded lanyards in. We don't sell them yet. They're only exclusively for like conferences that we're going to. But a lot of people have been asking like, wow, this is amazing. I need to get one of these.
Yeah, that's great. I need to get one of those. I've been looking for
I'll
a
send
nice
you
lanyard.
one.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, that'd be great. Cool. So we talked a little bit about this, but how does the AI work? Like, give me some of the juicy details on the AI and how are you mentioned you got a lot of data from different countries on different stoplights, but how does the AI itself work?
Yeah, good question. So basically, the technology that we're using is object recognition. So how that works is you have indeed that millions of pictures of images, whether there's pedestrian signal on it or not, and you annotate the availability of a pedestrian signal, and then you more clearly say it's a walk, don't walk, or even countdown status, because that's also something that we detect. And so by having all those images and training samples, we can train an algorithm to understand what is a pedestrian signal first, and as secondary, what's a walk sign, what's a don't walk sign, and what's a countdown signal. And so again, it all relies on how good your data is and how the variety of your data is. Again, it comes down to those cities and those daylight conditions and everything. So again, it took us quite a while to reach that level of what we wanted to have, because of course it's such an important thing to assist people to get across the street. But basically, in a gist, it's just detecting that signal, and it only focuses, of course, and it's a good one. It only focuses on pedestrian signals. So we don't support car lights, bicycle lights, or anything else. It visually is looking for actually icons that are the walk sign, the white walking person, and the red hand, which is the don't walk sign. And there's a lot of, without going into too much detail, but indeed, like under the hood, there's a lot of things. So it's not only looking for colors, but also contours, and everything makes up the definition for the algorithm. This is a walk sign, and this is a don't walk sign.
Got it. So it's a very dependable object recognition system, it basically sounds like.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Cool. So I know you're on iOS. Are you on any other platforms?
Good question. Yeah, no, right now we're indeed only on iOS, and it's twofold. One, of course, we're a team of 7, so we're still a smaller company, and so we figured all the way in the beginning that, of course, the majority of the community is on iOS due to accessibility that was already in place from the early days at Apple. And so I think, of course, that's one portion to the story, why we're not on Android or any other platform. But I think the second and most important reason is that our app, the Oko app, is indeed relying on AI to tell you whether you can walk or not. But that algorithm is so computationally heavy, but we've made it, or we optimized our AI to run locally on your device, which means you're not relying on a cellular connection nor Wi-Fi connection to talk to any cloud service to tell you then the walk or don't walk is on, because it's such a crucial aspect. You need to have it instantly, the feedback to know whenever you can cross. And so the fact that it's running locally and requires a lot of computational power, only Apple with their iPhone offers us the tools as developers to do or enable that AI inference on device. And so it's not to say that there's no Android at all that might support an OCO. But of course, as a younger team, we don't have the resources right now to go there, because ultimately we won't be able to support any other, or not all Android devices, probably only like an upper segment, maybe a Pixel or a Google S series. And so the trade-off there is for us is like, if it's already a minority in terms of percentages, but then within the Android community, how many people are on those higher end levels? So it's something that we don't know, and I also don't want to make any false promises. We are always willing into going to Android, but there's a lot of technical challenge that like keeps us away from doing Android as well.
Yeah, I see that makes it hard when you don't know what type of hardware you're interacting with. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, that's the one good thing about iOS devices. You know what you're getting when you get.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also, I mean, we do support an iPhone 8 or newer, so it's like, what is it now, 10 to 15 devices that you need to support, and that's quite manageable. But for Androids, you're probably talking about a majority in like hundreds, if not thousands, of devices. So it's pretty complex to do and crack Android, especially for us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's great that you support above iOS 8. That's great. Or iPhone 8, I mean. So if I'm in another country, how will I be able to use OCO, or will I know how will I know if I can use OCO?
Yeah, good question. So we actually don't put it somewhere on the website, but we do always mention it in like webinars. But there's only 4 countries where OCO is available as of today. That's our home country, Belgium. Then of course the US, and then you have Spain and Japan. And so why like only 4 countries? It all boils down into, again, having data of country-specific pedestrian signals that again are different from one country to another. So there's a lot of resources that we need to invest into developing another AI model for every other country, so we support that specific country. And the only way to like switch, and it's an iffy way, I would say. The only way, if you, for example, as a US citizen, go to Belgium, you need to go to your settings, your Apple settings, and change your country from the US to Belgium, so that our app, the OCO app, understands like, hey, you're in Belgium, so we need to use the AI that was used and trained on Belgium traffic lights. And of course, down the line, whenever we open up new countries and anything, we hope, of course, based on GPS, to just automate it. Once you're getting in another country, that we immediately pick up another AI to use to detect that signal.
Got it. So it's pretty much just a matter of need to repeat the data collection and annotation process that you've done in the US and Belgium and the other countries, in every country basically.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
A lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but I think what the beauty of our app also is, although it doesn't use any cellular data to provide you the status of the signal, there's of course an opportunity for people to contribute in sharing their data. And so what that means is that every time a user is at an intersection and detects a walk, don't walk, or countdown status signal, they can share an image of that specific intersection, wherever that may be here in the US. And so what it enables us is to collect so many images of all particular cities, all light conditions again. And so in a sense, they're contributing in enabling us the tools to make a better product for themselves, but everyone else here in the US or even beyond. So that's pretty beautiful. And all the way in the beginning, as I mentioned, we used to collect our data on ourselves, like, and family collected it as well. But right now it's just our user base that is going out there every day. And I think it's pretty cool, actually. Like last month, we had 180,000 streets crossed. So that also reflects into, again, so many data points, which we then internally can use to make a better product.
That's awesome. That's crazy. That's a crazy number of very, very high number of streets crossed. That's great. So currently OCO is completely free to users. What plans do you have to start bringing in money into Oko so we don't lose it? Because that would be really terrible if we stopped having access to Oko.
Great question. Yeah, so it also is linked to our mission and vision. Basically, all the way from our start, we were like, it's a basic right to explore and go wherever you want to go. So we never wanted to ask any money to the end consumer. And right now we're backed by venture capitalists, so that's how we can sustain our business. But basically, down the line, as we evolve our Oko app with many other features to come, of course, we ultimately want to work with businesses or governments to also provide accessibility information of, for example, a bar, a restaurant, or a city, such that you can also get that through our platform. And in a sense, then by working with those B2B partners, we can sustain our model and still facilitate our app for free to the end consumer.
That's awesome. So basically when I'm a user, I can pretty much expect not to need to pay for Oko. That's basically your mission, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's something also that we've discovered, right? I mean, there's so many assistive technologies are pretty expensive, and it's just due to economics of scale. And so what we figured out is like, hey, we need to find a way to have a great impact, and we feel that's just only usable or feasible through a mainstream product, which is a smartphone with what a lot of people already own. Instead of like carrying around XYZ assistive technologies that you need to charge as well and need to think about, we just wanted to make it very simple through a smartphone app. And of course, indeed, even more so, make it for free. So there's no barrier at all to try to use it, see if it's something for you, and make use of it whenever you want.
That's awesome. So basically what you're saying is everybody who's blind on this call should download the Oko app. And where can they get it?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So it's a free app that you can get in the App Store. You will probably you will find it under full Oko-AI Copilot for the blind. And so basically, again, it's only available in 4 countries: the United States, Spain, Japan, and Belgium. And so unfortunately, if you're not in one of those countries, you won't be able to download the app as of yet.
Got it. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Michael. This has been an amazing conversation that we've had about Oko and, the future of crossing streets. And I definitely have Oko on my phone, so I'll be using it.
That's great. And now you probably have a lanyard as well, which I'll send you.
Yeah, that'll be even better. Yeah, because there's a lot of these computer vision apps that are coming out that are needing that phone. Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. This has been an amazing conversation. And everybody, go and download Oko if you're in one of those 4 countries.
Thanks so much, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon and Michael. The OKO app is just one more app that helps us as blind pedestrians feel more safe when we're crossing intersections. Our next session is titled Dotpad 2.0. John, can you tell us about the Dotpad?
Sure. The dot in that title refers to the Dotpad, which is the revolutionary tactile display we've featured in the Dot team in the past at SiteTech, and their story, as well as their technology, just keeps getting better. Among other things, their new faster Dotpad tactile display refreshes 10 times faster, almost in the wink of an eye. To moderate this session, we've invited Professor Nicholas Giudice, a professor of spatial computing in the School of Computing and Information Science at the University of Maine, and a founder and chief research scientist of the Virtual Environments and Multimodal Interaction, VEMI, which is one of the largest experiential research facilities in the country, combining immersive virtual reality, augmented reality, and interactive technologies.
Over to you, Nicholas.
Dot 2.0. Speakers: Eric Ju-Yoon Kim, co-founder and CEO at Dot Inc. Ki Kwang Sung, co-founder and CBDO, Inc. Moderator, Dr. Nicholas Giudice, Founder and Chief Research Scientist, University of Maine.
Thanks, Alice, and hello. Welcome to everybody tuning in today. My name is Nicholas Giudice, and we'll be hearing about what's been happening with the Dotpad since they were here at SiteTech Global last year. So, excitingly, for me at least, I was recently able to get my hands on one of the Dotpad units and put it through its paces, and I'll say I was definitely impressed, and I don't say that just because I'm moderating this session. I'm actually difficult to impress. I'm a researcher who does a lot of work in the domain of tactile technologies. I'm also a blind user who uses a lot of tech in my daily life, and I have a pretty good sense of what works and what's hype. And after working with and playing with this unit for a while, it's definitely the real deal. I'm really excited about what it means for the next era of tactile access, especially for graphics. I see all kinds of applications in terms of blind folks in education and work and navigation and different types of social engagement. So let's get on and hear about the cool stuff from our panel. So we have Eric, the CEO, and Key, the CDO at Dot, with us today. Hey, both. Welcome.
Nick, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of cool stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This is Key. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of great stuff to talk about. Let's jump right into it. Why don't you just start by giving us an update about what's been going on with the Dotpad since last year?
I think first Key can give some software updates, and I'll do some hardware updates.
Yeah. So my name is Key. I'm a co-founder at Dot. So today I'd love to give you some little bit more updates about the software and also integration of the Dotpad with other screen readers. Basically, recently we have collaborated with many screen reader softwares, including NVDA, and we are also talking with JAWS to integrate our software. And also we're working with Google people to integrate the Dotpad with Chrome OS, and also, of course, Apple VoiceOver. So today, I'm really excited about giving you more clues about our collaborations with all screen reader softwares. And also, we have an update with the generative AI APIs. So we are integrating our software with the generative AI APIs to generate the tactile graphics and also converting images into tactile graphics.
Yeah, we'll dig into a little bit more of that. That's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and also like Key mentioned, we have a lot of software collaboration and software updates, but also we have a lot of hardware improvements. So, just imagine tactile graphic display as a monitor. Of course, in our world, there are different sizes of monitors. So we have right now 4 different sizes of Dotpad. So the largest one is 832 cells. So you can imagine it's more than 6,000 cells. And the small one is with 16 cells. So it's really comfortable. The current, kind of standard version that we have right now is 320 cells, which has more than 2,400 pins, braille pins. So like this, we are really working hard to present different sizes for different purpose. For example, like for developers, we saw a lot of needs about when developers do the coding, they want to see in more bigger screen and some of like creative purpose too, collaboration with designers and developers. They also want a very big screen. And, not just different sizes, we have upcoming next tactile cells. It's called it's third generation, so we call D3 cell. Right now, the current version we have is D2 cell, which is second version, and the D3 cell, is amazingly fast. So it became more than 10 times faster than what we have right now. So we expect with this speed and with this refresh rate, we believe we can even put some of the video contents or like games or sports games. So it's going to be more and more dynamic. Of course, there is some gaps. When you feel tactile on your through your fingers, of course you need some time to familiar with it. But we believe that we right now have a fundamental technology that we can put a lot of diverse contents, includes like more dynamic contents like videos. So we're so excited, like so many entertainment related thing like games and exciting thing could happen. So we're really excited.
Let me follow up on that, because this is one of the limitations I feel of most displays that have been out there. This kind of the refresh rate, it's really difficult to make these cells refresh the screen in a way that is kind of, it's okay for static images, but it's really slow for anything that's dynamic. And so these D3 cells that you're talking about, they're not in the units yet, but they're coming. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And
So
they're going to be like 10 times faster, if I'm hearing you correctly?
exactly. So it's 10 times faster. Yeah, the development has finished. So right now we're working on the production side. So we are planning production, some of the test production really soon. But the actual device will be possible a little bit later. So, but this is coming. Development has, yeah.
Well, that's cool, because that was one of the limitations when I was using this, where it was, you get a graphic to come up and it would take a while to come up, and I know that that's kind of the normal practice, but it's frustrating. So that's really cool to hear. Can you speak a little bit more about in the different incarnations and the different sizes of the products? Is the resolution, the tactile resolution of the cells the same in terms of pin density, pin spacing, and these types of things?
Yes, we know there is a Braille standard, so we are right now following that. So basically, on Dotpad, one of our core principle is we need to put Braille and also graphic at the same time with existing standard format. So it's same, but in the future we believe that the dot can be more dense, so it can present more specific information or delicate information. But also we believe it's gonna be a 3D format, so it's gonna be more, you can actually feel the scale of the contents and colors. Yeah.
Oh, so you're saying ultimately your goal is to have different dot heights?
Exactly.
Oh, great. Yeah, I mean, one of the things when I saw it, when I was using it in the version pad I was working with, it had a one-line Braille display. So I thought that was going to be only where the Braille was. And it was cool to see the Braille on the main graphics part of the display integrated with the graphics, because obviously that's what you need to do in the real world. But other units that I've seen can't, they only can do Braille on the dedicated display. And so I thought that's, obviously something that's people are going to want. My question here was, so you mentioned the screen reader access, and I was able to connect and do some work testing with NVDA, which worked well. And it was really cool to see the multi-line Braille on the big part of the display. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did. And then once I was using it, I'm like, oh, wow, my one-line display kind of stinks. But so far that doesn't work with graphics. So I'm assuming that's something that you're working on. I'm wondering when do you imagine having full screen reader integration where you'd be able to access the graphics and the text on the same display?
I think he can answer that.
Yeah, basically we are collaborating with many screen reader softwares, but firstly Apple and VoiceOver, they we have integrated our Dotpad with the voiceover software so far, and then they put the official the software on the public like 1 year and a half ago, 1 year and a half years ago, and so basically voiceover the official software, they support the Dotpad in the accessibility, the voiceover setting, and actually when we turn on the voiceover, we can actually see the Dotpad to display the graphics, and also NVDA. So basically not only the voiceover iOS, but also like the Windows OS screen readers, such as JAWS and NVDA. So we are talking with JAWS, and we are collaborating with JAWS, NVDA right now, and it's gonna be done by by early next year, around January, February. So we can actually see the multi-line at this moment, and we can actually see the spatial information, including tactile graphics, by February next year.
Excellent. I had a fun time in the voiceover, using voiceover, playing with the emojis, because I always hear there's an emoji in my text or something, but I have no idea what they look like. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the AI layer? Because I think this is that API is really cool, and it's obviously I've done some work in this area, segmenting a graphical content, converting the visual image to a tactile output, which is a much lower bandwidth modality. It's just hard. So I'm interested, what can you say about how the AI is facilitating this process? How is it working?
Well, I think, it started with the fundamental problems, like right after we started this project, we realized there are not many standards or UI, UX examples, or even like there was no standardized contents. So we felt so hard, because, especially there are no, kind of a pre-research about this area. So, of course, there are, some researches that we used it as a reference, but certainly there's not many contents. So we thought that if we could actually use AI to generate specific information, especially graphic and image information for blind people in tactile format, and if you can train AI, in more, I would say, better and better, in terms of feeling on your fingers. So for example, at first we started with transferring images in existing format to tactile. We used AI on that purpose, but right now we are researching very hard how can we use AI to blind people type it or say something, and AI could actually generate tactile images exactly for that purpose. So
make a circle type, something like that. Make a picture of a dog, something like that.
Yes, simple images to complicated images, or even creative images, and maybe Venn diagram or charts too.
So are you using proprietary AI algorithms that you're developing? Are you using open source APIs, or how are you doing this?
So basically, we are using open source AI APIs. So image generative AI, and also so we actually use different two APIs. Like one is generative AI to create simple images and graphics, and also we use different API to convert that simple image into tactile graphics. So we combine together so that basically outcome would be when we type something in text, such as lion or giraffe, then outcome will be automatically translated into tactile graphics on the Dotpad display.
I mean, one thing that you hit on that really is needed is more standards in this area. And it would be great to get if companies and researchers and other people could come together and specify something that people could use, because it is a huge limitation of people working in, in graphical, accessible graphics.
Mm-hmm.
Another part that I found cool was this, I believe it's called the Dot Canvas app. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. This is where you could kind of tweak and manipulate the images or draw on a tablet and iPad. I think you have Android support coming. And then the output is rendered on the display. So it's kind of like a paint kind of, but it was neat because I could actually draw on the iPad and then feel what I drew on the Dotpad.
Yeah. So that canvas, that is the one, the first .own software for the Dotpad. And as you mentioned, it's like a PowerPoint for the Dotpad usage. So you can draw something, you can put some the shapes and figures on the canvas. And so if you type something, it will automatically translate it into Braille and then display it on the canvas. So you can display on the Dotpad as well. And one good thing about the Dotpad, that canvas, is you can also upload any image or PDF file on that canvas. So image can be translated into tactile graphics and then displayed on the Dotpad display. And also any PDF file can be also translated into multi-line text Braille display on the canvas.
I think also one very cool thing is it's interactive. So the canvas can be connected with multi Dotpads, like 10 Dotpads, for example. And you can imagine, like, you can do the presentation. So you have your images and data on the canvas, and you can send it simultaneously to 10 Dotpads. So if you have people that want to share real-time information, it can be really, really interactive. You can put some label on it, or we can change the graph shapes. So it's really kind of a new communication, more professional communication tools that we are imagining. And also we have the share functionality, so like a Google Drive or iCloud. So on Dot Drive, you can share your works with other people. So we already saw a lot of professionals are sharing their contents. For example, like some science teachers actually worked on how to explain the shapes of the suns, in different time. So we are very excited. The users are already sharing a lot of professional tactile and Braille contents on Canvas.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine in a classroom having a teacher, as you said, a colleague, doing something, having it shared in real time. I mean, that's the huge problem, right? And I think we'll get to this because you've also talked about books, but often when you have to get a book made into Braille or a tactile equivalent, not only is it really expensive, but it takes months. And so being able to do this in real time is huge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
As a researcher, myself, and I know there's other people probably listening here that use tactile technology and are interested in how this could be used. I'm interested in your kind of views on how this relates to research, but specifically also how it. One problem I noticed that isn't just related to research, but to graphical manipulation and graphical, how you can do translations of graphics on the screen. So, for instance, zooming and panning when you have a large image. I do some work with large format maps, and on the one hand, the Dotpad seemed like a great way to show maps, but I couldn't figure out how to get anything to zoom in a way that was useful. Is that something that you're working on, or where is that at?
So basically, in the Dot Canvas, we don't really support the zoom in and out functionality of the images because that is static the canvas like a PowerPoint. So they basically when they have different information, complex images, then they create different slides of the images and graphics to tell the story for the education. But at the same time, we're adding those zoom in and out and navigate image functionality in NVDA screen reader integration. So when we have the images and graphics on the Windows OS PC, then the NVDA screen reader can go to any images and graphics. And also we're supporting zoom in and out the functionality to make it abstract version or specific version, detailed version of the images. So the people can navigate through the graphics.
Oh, so like hard coded zooming almost.
Yeah. So
I mean, it makes it, yeah.
Yeah, basically what we want to do is we want to show the whole layout of the screen information first, and then when they focus on the specific elements, then it will show the detailed information out of that.
And I would imagine the type of graphic makes a difference. So, I mean, it's much easier to figure out how to zoom on something like an SVG than a fixed, PNG or something.
Yes.
One thing that I kept thinking about when I was using the system was how useful it would be if it supported some kind of bidirectional kind of input and output functions on the device. So instead of just being more of an output display, imagine if I could touch the cells directly and draw on the display or click on something on the display. And I know that that's something that it's one of the big benefits that people talk about with the the competing graffiti device that is exciting to people. And I'm just wondering, is that anything that you could imagine being adopted into the dot cells in the future?
Well, I think, you mean the touchable, right?
Touchable, yeah, and having it be touch sensitive.
Exactly. So I think for that part, right now we are doing that with the HumanWare and APH on Monarch device. So on Monarch,
okay,
yeah, on Monarch, it can actually trigger fingers. So you can use your fingers to navigate contents, and it can actually know where your fingers are on the tactile screen. So Monarch is the most advanced device that with the partnership we are working on. So on that device is already possible, and I think in the in near future there will be diverse way of using your kind of touch on tactile screen. There are diverse ways to do it, but right now we are using the radar sensor to track fingers. Yeah. There is some pros and cons, but that's the best way that we can do right now. So we are working on that.
So can you briefly, because I know some people, including myself, apparently are a little bit confused between the Dotpad and the Monarch. I know that your technology is underlying both, but what's the fundamental difference?
Well, I think the fundamental difference is first of all the size. So Monarch is 480 cells, and it is specifically designed for a textbook, so for K-12 education. APH has a great mission and vision to actually digitalize all the textbook for students in the world, of course in the US first. So it's different size and different functionality. It has also own OS. So it's more, I would say, complete device. And I think the Dotpad is more like a screen, monitors that can be used in diverse purpose researches, in your professional careers, or in your home for entertainment. So, with Dotpad, we would like to find a lot of potentials as much as we can. So, for example, right now, with some of the partners, we are working on games. Like we recently made Texas Hold'ems, and we
Okay.
it's a lot of blind people are really excited and enjoyed playing it. So, for example, we're imagining how what if blind people do the multi playable games in their home, competing each other through a tactile screen and also sounds and also talking. So, we see so many potential on this. And also recently we also had a project with Toyota in Japan. Akio Toyota, the chairman of Toyota, actually wanted the racing games accessible to blind people. So we actually created a solution for racing games. So with commentary voice, you hear all the what's going on the circuit, and you can feel where the car is on the Dotpad, and you can track the record. So Dotpad is like a monitor that we see every day. So it's different type, different sizes, different purposes, more variety of purposes. But Monarch is specifically for education and more complete device, more advanced device for.
But are they also using your work with the AI layer and the smart canvas and these things? Is that included in their OS as well?
I think in the future it will be integrated, but at this moment, it's a big project. So I think we have a full schedule to support K-12 education. So, that's kind of first priority right now.
So I know we're running out of time. I know there's a lot of people that are really interested in these products and in what you're doing and in the advancements and how quickly things are happening. I guess my question is, how do you think of your market and how do customers get a hold of these things? Because if I understand your strategy, the Dotpad or the Monarch, but they're being, you get them through educational organizations or other types of distributors, not direct to customers. And so how does a customer, if they're interested, get their hands on getting one of these?
So I think the Monarch is also they are focused on education market. The Dotpad is more variety of the contents and also other entertainment functionality that we have. So usages, so that basically we are also targeting not only the education but also rehabilitation and job access and entertainment market. So we are targeting so many different types of the rehabilitation centers and also the B2B the customers. For example, blind people and blind employees, they are working in the company, and then they have to work with their colleagues based on the Microsoft Office tools and documentation tools. So I think the Dotpad is more like working with the distributors for the B2B and rehabilitation market for the blind employees and the people. So yeah, that's the one strategy. And also in the future, we love to make the Dotpad the price dramatically affordable for the every individual blind users. So I think in the future we can also provide the Dotpad with a really lower price for individual blind people, and also even we can provide the subscription model, like a rental service for the lower the barrier of the price, so that we hope that we can actually provide the Dotpad to individuals.
Yeah, and then the B2C to market, that would be great. I mean, so many people would love this. Well, looks like I know we're almost out of time. I want to thank you both, Eric and Key. This was really interesting. I know there's going to be a lot more updates. I think probably a lot of people in the audience are interested, I think everyone should, feel free to reach out to us if people have questions, and we can certainly keep this discussion going. And yeah, thanks to you both, and thanks to everybody at SiteTech Global. And back to you, Alice.
So thank you, Nick, Eric, and Key. Really fascinating information about this hardware. Our next session is pretty closely related to the Dotpad. John, can you cue us up for the headline for this session?
Sure. The title of this next session is "The Timing for the Release of APH's Monarch Tactile Display Could Not Be Better." Greg Stilson and APH's Monarch Tactile Display are no stranger to SiteTech Global. This is the third time we've featured this monumental education tech initiative, which starts with the Dotpad technical display, the same one we just talked about in the prior session. And it applies the genius of folks at APH and their partner Humanware to create the Monarch, a tactile display designed specifically for the education market to, quote, receive digital textbooks from HPH and other providers, significantly reducing the time to fingertips of our students. And it's almost here. Joining us to moderate this session is Dr. Josh Miele, a blind scientist, community leader, an inventor, and a principal accessibility researcher at Amazon. We're so happy to have Josh back to moderate a second session. We're sure he's destined to become the Terry Gross of accessibility.
That's great, John. Over to you, Josh.
The timing for the release of APH's Monarch tactile display could not be better. Speakers: Greg Stilson, Head of Global Technology Innovation, the American Printing House for the Blind. Moderator: Dr. Joshua Miele, Principal Accessibility Researcher, Amazon.
Thanks, Alice. Really wonderful to be here at SiteTech Global. Today, I am thrilled to be speaking with Greg Stilson from the American Printing House for the Blind. Greg, you lead global technology innovation at APH. But just in case anybody doesn't really know who you are and what you do, and maybe even what APH is, why don't you give us a little background on your role there at APH and APH's position in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh. So yeah, we are the American Printing House for the Blind. We're one of the longest running nonprofit organizations. We are federally funded, and the American Printing House for the Blind is a resource that provides materials, products, and resources for students and teachers, students who are visually impaired and the teachers who teach them. And so I always say we do everything from the lowest of the low tech, things like Braille paper, to some manipulatives, a lot of kits and things like that, to high-tech products like refreshable Braille displays, low vision magnifiers, and this Monarch tactile display that's coming down the road. I've been there since 2020, not new to the assistive tech world. I ran product at Humanware for a little over 12 years, and also did some work with IRA as well when they were sort of in the infancy of their startup as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
you've been doing great stuff for a long time, and it's really great to be talking to you today about. You mentioned the Monarch, and there's so much to sort of say about that. But for those who have not been oriented to it, could you just give us a quick overview? Maybe a 10,000-foot view of what the Monarch is and does, and maybe just. I think you've got a unit there to show us, or maybe a video of it. So that'll be really good for people to actually see a demo, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Monarch has been this sort of long-standing dream that many of us, I'm blind as well, and we've all kind of had this dream of a tactile display that's capable of showing both Braille and tactile graphics on the same surface. And this is a project that's really come to fruition because of partnership, right? The American Printing House for the Blind knew that we could not do this on our own, and so we partnered with the aforementioned Humanware, who's a manufacturer of assistive technology, They're also doing some of the software that's running on this. We also partnered with the National Federation of the Blind to make sure we had the voice of the nation's blind doing testing and providing feedback alongside. Along with really one of the foundational pieces of this technology is the dot technology that goes into the tactile display. And so this utilizes the Braille technology, or the Braille cells provided by Dot Incorporated out of South Korea. And really, it is a self-contained device. It is a tool that has very specialized applications on it that you'll be able to see. I'm actually going to do a quick demonstration of what it does. But the goal here is that this product will be a tool that a student would essentially be able to use in every class that they're going to encounter in their educational career. So being able to tackle the Braille literacy aspects along with things like geometry, mathematics, science, and as you mentioned, Josh, maps as well, geography. So what you see on the screen here, I'm going to share my screen, is you're seeing the main menu. I've got it connected to my computer as a monitor. So visually what you're seeing is the home menu of the device, and you see the applications that we have. This is an early beta device, so there's a limited number of applications that you're seeing, but you see Braille Editor, Tactile Viewer, a word processor, a file browser, the Victor Reader book reading application that we'll get into in a little bit, and then an all applications option. So the first thing I want to just quickly show is this is just simulating. What I've done is press the enter key on the book reading application. I've opened up the book Alice in Wonderland. And what you're seeing here is the actual Braille dots of
not
Alice.
Our Alice, not Alice, our host, but
not Alice. Correct. This is the OG, if
Although,
you will.
It could be like with this, SciTech Global Wonderland.
Exactly.
Next year we'll call it Wonderland.
There you go. Okay. So at this point, what I'm looking at is the chapter 1 of Alice in Wonderland. This is a BRF, and we'll get into kind of why that means something here shortly. But this is just reading an original BRF. That is on this device. So I see chapter 1, and I see Alice was beginning to get very tired of blah, blah, blah. And I can pan this display using the page up and page down buttons that are to the left and the right of the tactile display. So I'm panning this up and down. And able to see things like indentations, center alignment, things that you would traditionally see on a piece of Braille paper. For our sighted audience, I can actually invoke, if I go into the options menu here, I can turn on a visual Braille representation. So our sighted audience or our sighted teachers would be actually able to see what our students are actually looking at, which is really powerful in that I can turn on this visual Braille representation, and because we have a touch sensor on this device, they can actually even see where I'm touching on the tactile display. So you'd be able to see sort of a red highlight of where my fingers are touching at this point. So that's just one quick overview of the Braille portion. I wanted to quickly jump in to show one tactile graphic, and that is sort of if I go into the tactile viewer here. One of the things that we're really excited about with this is that it actually opens up the concept of dynamic tactile graphics, right? So here, I don't have to run a graphic off on an embosser to look at it. I could type in, I'm connected to the APH Tactile Graphics image library over our wireless connection, and I can type in the 50 states. I'm just doing a search right now in our Tactile Graphics image library, and I can type in 50 states. And it's now showing me search results of the 50 states that are available. And
that is super cool.
At this stage, I'm going to now hit the enter key on the 50 states tactile graphic that exists already. And
that's a graphic that's in your library. It's been vetted. It's known to be a quality tactile graphic.
Exactly. Yep. So now what you're looking at is you're looking at the overview mode. And what this does is it takes the tactile graphic that was created but for a 11.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and it's kind of scrunched it down into our tactile display. But what I can do is using our touch sensors of the display, I can actually zoom in. So if I want to find the state of California, for example, I can zoom in by just positioning my finger on where I believe California would be. And now it's zoomed in to where California and the Northwest region of the US is. And I'm using my arrow keys that are to the right or the left of the display to now pan around and see the full display of California, where it meets Oregon and all those types of areas as well. So but this is where it's really powerful, because I can zoom back out, and if I want to go to the Northeast region, I can go to the top right corner of the display, find where that is, and just double click the my finger, and now I've zoomed in on the top right corner of the US here, and I see New York and those type of states as well. So
you're really pandering to the crowd there, the California, New York,
Exactly.
Sorry, Middle America.
We got well, I'm from Wisconsin, so we could jump in the middle if we want, Josh. But
Greg, I have a ton more questions, so I don't want to rush you through your demo, but I do want to sort of move on. Is there anything else you wanted to point out?
No, I think that covers the Braille and the graphics, so that's great.
Okay. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is, this is super cool. Like I'm a tactile graphics nut. I love and have always been a huge advocate for tactile graphics and their use. This is a technology that I think since I was about 8 has been almost available. Like everybody's been showing, demos and prototypes of what I have come to call, and I think what has generally been called the Holy Braille,
right.
Like this thing that. So why now? Why is this the right time? What's changed that allows us to really now think that this is going to happen finally?
It's a great question, and quite honestly, when we started this whole project, Josh, the first year was really spent. We called it our Prove It Tour, and it was really going around to the major organizations, the main players in this space, and showing demonstrations of why this is the real deal. And I think it's a combination of a number of things. Number one is the technology finally exists. The dot technology is the real deal. It has the ability for us to do this tactile array in a fashion that allows us to do both graphics and Braille on the same surface. That's number one. Number two is that those partnerships have to exist for this to really come to fruition. There's no way that APH as its own entity could do this on its own. So we had to establish both a manufacturing partnership along with a user organization partnership with the National Federation of the Blind. And then I'd say lastly is funding. We, as APH, we do have this connection with the federal government. This is not going to be a cheap device. We are very clear on that. But we are also very clear that we are going to the federal government and saying, in the same fashion that you fund textbooks for the sighted population and for every kid in America, you need to fund this device, which will be every textbook the kid reads, along with so much more capabilities as well. And we've received very, very good feedback from the federal government, amongst all the turmoil that exists today in the federal government as well.
Sure. So what, let's think about this from the student's perspective. Like, how is this likely to impact our students? What ramifications do you think it has, or do you hope it has, for Braille and tactile literacy?
So for Braille literacy, when a student utilizes, and I know you use a single line Braille display, Josh, I use one as well. Like they're fantastic in making sure that Braille stays at your fingertips. But as for the teaching aspect of teaching Braille, they don't teach you to read correctly, right? So being able to read with two hands, using what they call the butterfly method to make sure that you're reading all the way across and tracking with one hand while you're reading, finishing the line with the other. That's not how they teach you to read on a single line Braille display. And I'm really excited to see what potential we see both in speed and comprehension when they're reading on a multi-line display like this. And when we look at textbooks and Braille transcription, being able to deliver these textbooks or just leisure books wirelessly, digitally, so that we're not waiting for volumes to come in the mail. As somebody who was a computer science person, like I waited for my math book.
We're old. We've been there.
Yeah, right. Like you're waiting for your volumes of Braille to come. way after the rest of the classes has already been to those volumes of Braille, right? Or they've been to those chapters. So our hope here is that we're going to be able to greatly speed up textbook delivery, but also speed up access to tactile graphics and being able to do what we showed earlier, access to tactile graphics image library. So if a student says, what does a pyramid look like? We can pop up a 3D graphic of a pyramid on the device.
Yeah, so I mean, tactile graphics, like that is my jam, right? Like I am super excited. I mean, I love Braille literacy, but I think that, you know, blind folks have really been operating in a world really almost free of tactile graphics, many of us, and it's essential for, you know, for STEM learning, for looking at timelines, for history, you know, for maps. There's so much that graphics will enable. And, you know, the idea of having on an electronic device the mixed Braille and graphics is super cool. But what are the other graphics opportunities? I mean, I'm thinking about, like, you know, obvious, you know, I was thinking about physics simulations, games. Talk to us a little bit about some of the sort of the wilder side of tactile graphics that this enables.
So, you know, being able to connect, and this is something that we're already in conversations with the mainstream screen reader providers and things like that, but using this as essentially a tactile terminal for your other devices, being able to immediately transfer information from a computer or from a smartphone to a tactile display on demand. I think AI is going to play a huge factor into that, right? Being able to Today, we don't have the AI or the existing AI to be able to strip a tactile graph or a graphic down into its, you know, necessary components for a blind student to access what they need, right? But we all know that's going to be coming, and you know, I think we share the dream that you'd be able to take a graphic and say, make this tactile readable, and it's able to strip it down to its necessary components at that point. The last thing I'll say is that one of the things that when we look at the challenges in the classroom is the impromptu learning challenges, right? The teacher forgets to get the TVI, a graphic or a component that they're going to be going over in the classroom ahead of time. And now what ends up today happening is the TVI is using household things like rubber bands and wiki sticks to be able to put that graphic together.
Yeah.
One of the things we're working on is a mobile device drawing tool for the TVI to essentially sketch out what that graphic is on their smartphone or their tablet or their computer, and then hit a button to transfer that in real time to the Monarch so that they can continue to learn even though that wasn't provided ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about the 3 E's, education, employment, and entertainment. And I think, you know, the final E has, you know, it's super important for all kinds of reasons. And it often gets lost in the scramble of dealing with the, you know, making sure that the first 2, education and employment, are accessible. Have you made any games for the Monarch yet?
We are working on 2 right now. One of them is a startup game to kind of teach how you do the pointing and clicking and zooming and stuff like that. So it's a take on the old Mario Paint's Fly Swatter game that was fun. So we're trying to swat the fly, essentially track it and swat it. But we're also working on tactile chess, which I'm super excited about, and that's something that Humanware and APH have really worked on heavily, is this software development kit. Our hope is to build our own games, but we want others to be able to build games for this as well. So really excited to say more on that here probably in the next year. But I would say right now we know gaming is a huge part of education as well. The best way you can teach kids is when they don't think they're learning something, but they are.
You bet.
So yeah, definitely fired up about that.
So you mentioned AI a couple of minutes ago, and I just want to, you know, the hardware is super cool, like the fact of a tactile display. But you know, you also mentioned BRFs, and BRFs are sort of hard-coded, formatted Braille files that that require a particular page size, a particular line length. I think, you know, what else needs to change in order for this Monarch dream to be realized? What are the software parts of this, and the sort of the standards, the file standards parts that need to change?
Yeah, so we call this the Holy Grail highway, right? If the Monarch is the Holy Grail, we kind of look at that as the car, but you need the road for it to drive on, and that's really where, as you said, the file standards had to change, right? You have BRFs that are designed for a physical piece of paper, right? And now, this is we're hoping the first tactile display of this nature, right? But at the same time, we know there's going to be more. And we also know that single line displays are not getting all they could out of a BRF file, right? You have more intelligence that you could put into a book like that or a file like that to make it easier to navigate. And so the functionality that we have in this device is only as good as the file type that we're opening. And so today, when you have a BRF file, it has zero navigation components to it other than the find command, right?
I've noticed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So being able to take a new file standard, and we've partnered with the DAISY consortium to really shepherd this through. But the eBraille standard is sort of this combination of hard-coded Braille, so formatted Braille, but also marked up in a similar fashion to an EPUB file. So being able to jump by table, jump by heading, use your table of contents, but most importantly, include your tactile graphics in the book as well. So utilizing links to link to tactile graphic files that are in the book itself. Today, when a book is created at APH, the graphics are always created separately and then bound in at the last minute. And today, with an eBraille file, you'd be able to see, it would say something like see figure B, but that would be a link. You could double click on that link and it would take you right to that graphic within your book at that point. So this I can tell you would not be moving forward if we didn't have the eBraille project happening in parallel. And that's something that we're equally as excited about.
And I think, it has many other implications as well. I mean, the idea of reflowable Braille means that not only will it be able to be put on a Monarch, regardless of line length, but you can, we'll have more flexibility in embossing files as well. And so just the eBraille standard, I think has been a long time coming. And I think, it's great that the Monarch has sort of pushed that forward. So I know that we've only got a few minutes left, and I've got so many questions. But real quick, Greg, can you give me sort of an paint a picture, if you will, with words of how this is going to get used in the classroom? What's your vision for that? And also, how are students going to get the unit?
That's okay. Good question. So within So we see a world where students are going to use this in almost every class, from their English class to reading, literature, all that kind of stuff. But most importantly, in the STEM subjects, and that's really where we're partnering with Desmos to create a tactile graphing calculator as well. So being able to do the on-the-fly graphs and be able to see where intercepts are happening and things like that without having to go to an embosser and take the time to emboss it on the fly. But as we mentioned, that impromptu learning in virtually every class, being able to show a right triangle when you need to, that type of stuff. But I think there's going to be more as we get into the learning management systems of being able to and starting to dream up these worlds where you could take a visual graphic and turn it into a tactile graphic on the fly. Accessing things like Google Classroom, if a teacher has a graphic there that you need to look at, being able to download that into your Monarch and have it applied a tactile filter, if you will. So I think those are just some of the early foundational. I've got a dream of being able to draw on this thing as a blind kid. I would love to see blind students doing a little bit more in art. But then
Not
you
just
asked how,
art, but all kinds of, drawing for communication, right? Like, if you want to teach if you're blind and you want to teach one of your sighted colleagues, classmates, about some geometry that you understand that they don't, it's nice to be able to draw.
Exactly, you got it.
Yeah.
So I think that's in the future as well. But you mentioned, how are they getting it? So we are about to start. So right now we're in the midst of field testing. One of our obligations to the federal government is that we actually put this in classrooms and report out on the data. So we have it in 45 classrooms around the country. And we start something that is really new for APH, but it's something that we believe needs to happen. So we're funding through our Center of Assistive Technology Training, starting in January. We're starting regional teacher training sessions where teachers can apply to be included in these regional in-person 2-day trainings, where they will learn as a TVI how to both utilize and teach this product. And at the conclusion of those trainings, as they have finished them, they will be given a Monarch of their own to practice on, to report out on how they're creating content for, things like that. So that we know this is a tech barrier for some TVIs, and this is a way that we're really introducing it early before the product gets in the hands of kids, so that the teachers sort of can eliminate that fear factor of getting it in the hands of the students down the road.
And I assume that teachers can just reach out to APH to get on that, to
absolutely
connect with that list. That's great. Don't mean to rush you, but we don't we don't have as much time as I wish we did. So, but here come the hard questions. How much is it going to be, and when can people actually get it? Not in a beta. In a beta program.
Yep. So our hope is to have this ready by school year 2020, well, the 2024-2025 school year, so the fall of next year. And it's not going to be cheap. As I said, we're still looking at anywhere from 18,000-ish type of dollars, and it's not cheap. This is where the federal government is really going to come into play. So it will be available at minimum on the federal quota system in the same fashion that you receive your federal quota dollars for your schools and things like that. But our hope is to get additional funding from the federal government that does not eat into the federal quota dollars as well. And so that is something that is still ongoing. Call to action, at least for our listeners here, is if you are in the United States, please contact your local representative and tell them why a tool like this will help blind students in the United States and ultimately the world.
Yeah. It has been such a pleasure to speak with you today. I really, I'm so thrilled that this product is coming from, from APH, who really understands how to make it, and the partners. It's really phenomenal. I've got my fingers crossed. I can't wait to have one of my own. And it is always great to speak with you, and I look forward to seeing your progress as the project moves forward. So thank you for speaking with us today, and thanks for being part of SiteTech Global. And back to you, Alice. Thanks.
So thank you, Josh and Greg. It is such a privilege to have two of the leading stars in accessibility here with us for SiteTech Global. And Josh, look out, Terry Gross. Here you come. Our next session, we are switching from hardware to human connection. The title of this session is Salesforce, the Office of Accessibility 4 years on. So, John, can you tell us about Salesforce?
Well, nearly 4 years ago, Salesforce stepped ahead into the tech and corporate world by announcing the formation of an Office of Accessibility, which was charged with pulling together all the strands of accessibility across the CRM giant, including workforce development, product development and design, and customer relations. SiteTech Global touched base with the fledgling effort in 2020, and this session will hear that the accessibility team has learned after 3 years of work to ensure every aspect of Salesforce embraces accessibility. Our moderator is the amazing Larry Goldberg, who is truly the sensei for the accessibility world. He has been a tireless advisor for SiteTech Global from the start, He was the head of accessibility at Yahoo and a groundbreaking leader at WGBH Boston, where he founded and directed its National Center for Accessible Media. He was directly involved in such groundbreaking legislation as the TV Decoder Circuitry Act, the Telecommunications Act of 1996, and the 21st Century Communications and Video Act, and continues to be a major influence in the disability work from startups to new legislation.
Okay, sending it your way, Larry.
Salesforce, the Office of Accessibility, 4 years on. Speakers: Christian Birch, Director of Accessibility Programs and Compliance, Salesforce. Derek Featherstone, VP of Accessibility and Inclusive Design, Salesforce. Paige Gulacy, Accessibility Support Engineering Manager, Salesforce. Moderator, Larry Goldberg, Accessibility Sensei and Technology Consultant.
Well, thank you so much, Alice. It's great to be here again at SiteTech Global with a group of really good friends, old and new, from Salesforce. We're going to hear some really interesting history of Salesforce. You hear a lot about companies and their maturity model as they develop their accessibility functionality and processes. I think we're all really welcoming Salesforce's rapid maturity model. From 0 to 60, went from infant to near adult pretty quickly. So we have here today Christian Birch, Derek Featherstone, and Paige Gulacy. Paige, I get that name right?
Gulacy, you're close.
Gulacy, all right, and we'll keep that. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, your role, your title, and how long you've been at Salesforce. And then we're going to get right into hearing how Salesforce developed its Office of Accessibility and how you help your customers. So let's start right off with Christian.
Thank you, Larry. My name is Christian Birch. I am Director of Accessibility Programs. I am part of our Office of Accessibility. I've been at Salesforce almost 11 years, and the last 4 years I've been honored to be a part of the Office of Accessibility. The prior 7 years, I was a senior leader in our support organization, working with Paige very closely.
Excellent. And Derek.
Hey, I'm Derek Featherstone. I'm the VP of Product Accessibility and Inclusive Design here at Salesforce. Been here for just shy of 2 years, joined in January of 2022. My team and myself, we're not actually part of the Office of Accessibility, but we're part of the product organization and in strategy and operations. And I think it actually highlights the strong partnership that we need to have with the Office of Accessibility to succeed with accessibility at scale for a company like Salesforce. So very, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Derek. And yeah, we're going to talk a bit about the organizational structure because every company is different and based on their culture, it tends to be what works for them. So Paige, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Larry. My name's Paige. I manage the accessibility support team here at Salesforce. We are aligned to the support organization. I've been at Salesforce for a little over 7 years, and I've been working in the support space pretty much my entire career. I work really closely with Christian and really closely with Derek's team on a regular basis.
Thanks, Paige. You know, that issue of how you organize yourself is very interesting. And the fact that you come from different areas within the company really contributes to how you've really gotten on the map so quickly. Christian, I'd love to hear a bit about the history of Salesforce's accessibility efforts, how you established this Office of Accessibility, and what kind of commitment it took from high up to establish that unit.
Larry, earlier when you mentioned the rapid growth that we've had in the last 3 years in the accessibility space here, it does come from our executives, absolutely. I think the drive for this though did come from our equality group for our colleagues with disabilities and allies, titled Ability Force. Our Ability Force colleagues championed these efforts through our executives, found the right executives to push this. And I think in a large corporation like Salesforce, that really is how you get the speed of execution, is getting the executives involved. And I'll highlight this accessibility support team as a perfect example of that. The creation of this team started with a vision from AbilityForce, which is of course our quality group for colleagues with disabilities, as well as a commitment from our support leaders, and then obviously the execution from the Office of Accessibility. I had this history working with the support team, and we found that looking at cases from customers with disabilities that I saw an egregious case where someone had said JAWS was third-party software, so it was out of scope for the support issue. And so we had that, and then we had customers that were going through internal technology review audits, and where do they send those results, and who's actioning them, and really the creation of this accessibility support team was our first opportunity to have what the Office of Accessibility, we follow a hub and spoke model, right? We don't have someone sitting in our support organization. We want to influence that support organization to invest and create great experiences for our customers with disabilities. And this started again with AbilityForce champion that we need to provide a better support for our customers with disabilities. We didn't want to create just like a disability answer desk where everybody with a disability goes with all questions, right? So we've done efforts to train our global support engineers how to provide a really great experience when you're supporting someone with a disability as a subject matter expert in your area. However, we didn't have a subject matter expert area for product accessibility. So when our customers would report those cases, it was, dependent on what support engineer they received and their level of experience with digital accessibility. So now we have this dedicated team. And I would just like to read a quote that Jim Roth, who is now our president of Global Success, 3 years ago when we created this team, he was the executive vice president of our support organization. And when we went to him, Office of Accessibility and AbilityForce, he absolutely agreed we need a team that is there to help our customers who use assistive technology with our products to help them succeed on the platform. And I really enjoy this quote. He says, "We have an important duty to ensure every single Salesforce customer and partner gets the support they need from Salesforce. We're proud to have a strong focus on equality and inclusion for our trailblazers with disabilities. Partnering with the Office of Accessibility in this way furthers our vision of providing a support experience that is personal and effortless. We're committed to continued disability inclusion and look forward to growing this team to help our customers." That was 3 years ago, that quote, and it still is true to this day. I think when we get some of the questions for Paige, she'll talk about that growth. And so to go back to your original point, Larry, the champion of this work from people with disabilities that work at Salesforce to go to our executives and have that support from our executives to create this world-class enterprise accessibility support team has just been phenomenal, and I'm honored to have been privileged to have been a part of that.
Thanks, Christian. You used the word support a lot, so I think we have to talk to Paige now. Paige's got a long history in support even before accessibility, so I'm really curious to hear how Salesforce helps your customers with disabilities or serve their own employees, and how you're implementing what everyone talks about these days. That's the shift left mentality. Maybe you could explain what that is as well.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Larry. And Christian kind of covered some of the history. But we did start as a really small team. We had 2 engineers when we first started. That was 3 years ago. Since then, we've pretty much quadrupled this team size, and that's really to meet the customer demand that we're seeing in enterprise level customers and the public sector. And I'd say we're now one of the industry's largest enterprise level accessibility support teams. And then just from an operational standpoint, each engineer that we hire and we bring in has extensive experience with assistive technology, including WCAG and 508 or Section 508. And our team does directly support 3 major product areas, and that's probably going to expand as we move forward. So we have extensive, experience on the Salesforce platform. And then another thing I want to mention is that we do strive to hire support engineers with disabilities who have, authentic experience with screen readers, This allows for those important perspectives and the authentic experiences to be shared when they're working with customers, or when we're just simply trying to align and explain how intended functionality works, with our product teams or internal teams. And then I want to mention, audits. So they do account for a majority of our volume, and we typically see audits submitted in bulk to us. So we have a lot of conversations with customers and partners to shift left, which truly means incorporating accessibility earlier into your development lifecycle. We often see customers, wait until the end of their implementation to test for accessibility. So we end up with, a big checklist of items and issues to validate, and it results in technical debt and delayed go lives. So those conversations my team is having and the advocacy in that space is really where I'd say we have a lot of the influence around the shifting left mentality. Also, a couple of things I want to touch on too is we want to encourage customers to manually test, right? So don't rely on automated testing alone. Involve users with disabilities throughout the process when you're doing testing, and then report issues as you find them, right? So don't wait until the end to report all your issues. And then the other thing that the support case process allows us to do is we can now tie volume to specific product areas, and we can work with Derek's team and with our various product teams to explain impact and urgency, and that allows us to influence the product accessibility roadmap. So while this team isn't directly involved in the development lifecycle, we certainly have a tremendous influence on what shifting left means for Salesforce and our customers.
That's interesting. You're just leading so perfectly into the product guy. So, Derek, and you said you've been with Salesforce for a couple of years, but you got a bit of a history in the field of accessibility. So I'd like to give you a chance to talk about where you came from and what you brought to Salesforce, and then talk about customer insights that you've seen there and the customer demand that Paige talked about.
Yeah, thank you. I have been in the accessibility industry since I can remember, really. I went out and created my own web design and development company in 1999 at the height of everybody going out and creating their own web design and development companies, and started that in 99 and really have been focused on accessibility since the mid 1990s when I was teaching high school, and first became aware of accessibility through that work when I was building websites and pages as resources for my students. So I eventually got to the point where accessibility became the only thing, and created and grew our company. We had our own consulting agency, Simply Accessible, that we ran for many, many years up until 2018, and then we merged with Level Access to come together, and I was at Level Access for 4 years before coming to Salesforce. So lots of experience on the consulting side, the web design and the development side, and pretty significant experience on the more on the user experience side of things. And one of our hallmarks was always, how do we make sure that people with disabilities are represented within this process? Right? It's not enough to just go out and do audits with automated testing tools and manual testing. We actually need to really understand how technology works for people with disabilities that are trying to accomplish tasks and do the things that they need to do in their day-to-day. And that's one of the perspectives that I try to bring here to Salesforce, to remind us all to authentically connect to the lived experiences of people with disabilities. And that becomes one of many data feeds or data signals or pieces of data that we use to create this overall picture here of how we're doing from a product accessibility perspective. So, we take insights that we gain from audits and from internal testing, from doing usability studies and exploratory work, whether it's at the end of creating a product or near the beginning, taking all of those insights and using that to really identify the barriers that exist not just in software that we've already created, but also in things that we have yet to create, right? It's really, really important to us to have that perspective of people with disabilities before we design and build the thing. So we take all of that data and the data that we get from customers via Paige's team, those support cases that come in, the things that we get from external audits or internal testing, and those inclusive design sessions in whatever form they take, that all gives us a really great picture of how we're doing and how we need to prioritize. I think that's kind of the bottom line. The influence that has on us is that it helps us to prioritize. It lets us see where are customers seeing issues, where are we seeing issues, where are people with disabilities experiencing barriers in our software or in the ways in which we are thinking about creating new things. And so prioritizing and seeing where our efforts have been successful or maybe less than successful are important. So I'll give you one example of that. We are on a journey, honestly, with data to figure out things like, how is Team X doing with keyboard related accessibility release over release over release? And if we're doing well there, great. How do we take that and then scale that to other teams? If we are not doing well there, how do we create enablement that actually improves our performance in that area? And how do we do that all at scale? And I think that data that we get is absolutely critical to help us figure out what we need to do this at scale, rather than thinking about it as just like one small little accessibility issue that needs to be solved. It's really about how do we do this at scale.
Well, you're a pretty big company, so you have a pretty big impact internally and on the rest of the world as well. It's interesting that here are the three of you in three different departments, three different bosses, I assume, reporting up to different organizations. We're all often asked, what's the best way to set up my accessibility team? And I always answer, well, it depends on your company and your culture, but we're hearing this idea of hub and spoke over and over again. And I think Paige has talked about that as well. So I'm curious if you could explain that a little bit, because here you are, three different departments. How do you coordinate that? And you also said you have the biggest support team that you've heard of in the industry. So what's your trajectory? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, thanks, Larry. So it's really important that support doesn't operate in a silo, right? So we have established really strong partnerships with Christian and the Office of Accessibility, who helps drive conversations with customers proactively to talk about their implementation, to talk about best practices. And then when we get to the support process, our team is able to, work with the customer and provide feedback and create create investigations and drive those conversations with product teams, which then, lands with Derek. So keeping a really close relationship and having consistent conversations is really, really important for all of our success. And just in terms of growth, so we've seen an explosion of growth in our enterprise level and public sector customers, which is awesome because they're, placing great emphasis on accessibility best practices and conformance. And, over the years, just these 3 years, we've been scaling to meet that demand. And right now, from an operational standpoint, our support is currently focused on AMER only, but we do have support engineers who are located around the globe. And then when we're done with our most recent hiring efforts, we will be a global team. So we'll be supporting customers in all of our geos. And I want to mention another important, component of the hub and spoke is not just with our extended stakeholders, but it's also with our global support teams. So it's really critical that we collaborate really closely with other support teams that may receive an issue that involves a customer with a disability. So we've done a lot of enablement and advocacy to ensure that our frontline engineers and any engineer who really is going to work with a customer with a disability is comfortable doing that, and they have training to do so, or they have training to engage our team appropriately so we can get the right resources in front with the customer. And I think considering, the vast number of customers who are prioritizing accessibility efforts, I do anticipate this team to continue to scale and to grow to that demand. And eventually, we'll have a big enough team where we'll have specific engineers specializing in specific product areas. And I think a lot of our growth too is attributed to our product teams, right? So as they continue to prioritize accessibility and create more accessible experiences, our team will, grow to support that volume that we'll see from customers.
You mentioned the customer demand. It's so great to hear that your customers are asking for this, which is one of the principles and levers for change that that Christian and I have both been working on, and that is the idea of Procure access, the procurement side. Salesforce has been a major supporter of this concept, which I'll ask Christian to explain. And Salesforce sits in an interesting place because you're both a supplier or vendor and a customer, and you serve your customers. So it's a really interesting place for you to be. So if you could, Christian, tell us a little bit about Procure access and how that's hopefully helping your business.
Yeah, so like Paige mentioned, the hub and spoke model and the partnership we have, I get an opportunity to be a lot more proactive. Support teams and our support teams specifically, our support engineers are break fix, right? And as they should be. That's what really the idea of any customer support is. There's a potential issue, and we need a way for a customer to report what might be an issue and have an expert validate those findings and create bugs, et cetera. However, we know that our customers are committed to more than just WCAG 2.1 AA, right? We've got customers asking about usability, different areas of assistive technology. But we start with WCAG 2.1 AA, right? So if there is a success criteria issue, then that's where Paige's team can come in. But what happens when there isn't a WCAG success criteria violation or potential violation, right? That's when I get to come in and talk to customers, and that's often pre-sales. So when a customer wants to know what is Salesforce's commitment, I get to join those conversations and talk about our commitment to accessibility. I obviously very, very proud. We're one of the original signers of the Procure Access Statement through disability, and part of that though was I went to our internal team and I said, hey, I really want us to be a signer on this. We commit to selling accessible products, and I want us to be purchasing accessible technology. And they said, okay, well, tell us more about they as our legal team said and our procurement team, they said, tell us more about what we sell and how we do it, because if we're going to ask our vendors to do this, we better be doing it as well. And so it just comes down to having the commitment, right? We're all on this journey of progress, and ideally we have perfection. I know there's this progress, not perfection. I think we can work towards perfection, but we're all humans, and there's obviously the right commitment from companies that need to be made, the right level of remediation, and that's why we have Paige and her team. We have the right partnership with our product organization through Derek and his leadership. I think anytime that there's a company that is concerned about if I'm procuring accessible products, sometimes I'll talk to customers. They say, well, according to your VPAT, and they don't even use the term ACR. I know already that they're oftentimes doing this from a checklist exercise. They'll say, hey, but you only have 90% conformance. And it's like, okay, well, the 10% that's not conformant is very minimal impact. And that's kind of concerning anyway to look at a percentage, because those don't tell us anything, right? We look at one of the things that I really appreciate, by the way, about Derek is he has such a thorough understanding of accessibility, and as well as with our products, we look at the impact, right? And what is the impact? We talk to people with disabilities, and that's how we drive. And I think Procure Access is what's enabled us to have those conversations, right? The commitment the ability to meet the commitment? Do they have the right people? Are they hiring people with disabilities? Is there research involved that includes people with disabilities that are actually consumers? And then the ability to remediate, like I mentioned earlier. And so I think having that allows me to go in and have conversations with our customers to instill that level of confidence, and at the same time gives me the opportunity, as the Office of Accessibility is clearly involved in accessible procurement, I get to go have those exact same conversations with our vendors. We have a responsibility as one of the largest technology companies in the world to help all these startups that are trying to pitch technology to Salesforce. I don't want to shut the doors on these folks just because they have an inaccessible tool, a piece of technology. I want to have conversation. I want to help push them and do what our customers are doing for us, right? And push us to do better. And so as long as I think we're all working from a place of good intent and the right level of commitment, I think that our Procure Access partnership has been invaluable for both areas of my work.
That's great. Anyone who's interested in Procure Access could find them on the Disability In website, and it really is about systemic change. If people are at major corporations, and you can see who signed on their site, all demand that the products they're buying for their customers and for their employees is accessible, that can have some pretty major change. And that's, I think, why so many big corporations are supporting it. Now, Derek, you and I have worked on another systemic change issue, which I think we have a minute or two to talk about, and that's Teach Access. Also looking to try to move the needle in a major way, and Salesforce has been a wonderful supporter of Teach Access as well. So can you tell us a few words about that?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most critical pieces of the puzzle that seems to be missing in the industry. And this is not just a 2023 thing. This has historically been the case where we see lots of professionals coming into the web industry, the software industry, whatever it may be, and they don't necessarily know even the basics of what accessibility is, or I'll say this, but there's lots of people that don't even know that people with disabilities can use computers, right? Like that still exists. That is very real, and something that, we think we should be addressing at a systemic level. And that's really where, Teach Access comes in, right? Providing whatever we can do to make sure that people that are graduating or that are coming through our school systems or coming through as apprentices or junior programmers or whatever, that they all come in with at least some basic understanding of some accessibility principles, and that we have built that into their lives. So it's not suddenly something new when they join an organization like Salesforce or any other enterprise or even small business, that accessibility isn't suddenly this new thing that they've never heard of before. And that just makes the work with Teach Access so important. It really, really is.
Well, as a board member of Teach Access, I thank you for your support. It's having a massive effect. And we're seeing now students coming out of colleges who actually know what accessibility is, the basic principles, know what WCAG is, know how to spell the word. So we're really pleased on how things have gone there. So Paige, I'm going to give you the last word because you've mentioned a couple of initiatives that are very important at Salesforce, the voice of the customer and the idea exchange. Can you tell us a little bit about those two initiatives?
Sure. Yeah. So the Idea Exchange is a feedback platform. So anyone who has an idea on like a feature enhancement can go ahead and submit that idea, or they can vote on pre-existing ideas. And then our product teams will review those regularly, and they typically look at the top voted ideas, and then they'll incorporate those into one of our major releases, which happen 3 times a year. So our support team, I'd say typically we'll receive a case and it'll originally be about a feature request, or it might turn into a feature request conversation. And so our support teams can work really closely with our account teams. And that's where like kind of the voice of the customer, the internal prioritization comes into play that works in tandem with the idea exchange that the customers are submitting, on that platform. So we advocate for our customers really strongly internally, and the support team has a really powerful say in those things that we're seeing, especially the trends, the repeat asks that we're seeing from customers. So my team's done a fantastic job, driving visibility across those issues.
The democracy comes to the engineering team and throughout Salesforce to actually decide what are the hot issues that need to be tackled. That's great to hear. And there's nothing like empowering a designer or an engineer with what they see as the needs on accessibility. Very effective. So we're running out of time now. I want to thank all of you from Salesforce. I want to thank Salesforce for being a thought leader in this field and supporting all these major important initiatives. So thank you to Paige and to Christian and to Derek. And we will see you hopefully face to face again sometime soon.
So thanks, Larry, and the whole Salesforce team. It is so impressive to see how accessibility can take hold in an organization such as Salesforce. Our next session is about alt text and audio description, two very closely related topics. So over to you, John.
Okay, this session is called Can We Enlist AI to Accelerate Human-Led Work in Alt Text and Audio Description? In video, truly great audio descriptions use spoken words to augment the obvious soundscapes and call out subtle visual details. It's an art only a human team could produce, but it's also expensive and time-consuming. In that regard, producing alt text for images online or audio descriptions for video face the same challenge: how to do more and to do it well. At Scribely and Max, the human-first approach is uppermost, but they're also exploring how AI and related tech can be narrowly channeled to speed up their vital work. Our moderator for this session is Thomas Reed, who is the host and producer of Read My Mind Radio, a podcast featuring compelling people impacted by all degrees of blindness and disability. Thomas is a member of the Social Audio Description Collective and a freelance audio description narrator. He has appeared in projects for Netflix, HBO, Max, Hulu, PBS, and more.
Okay, Thomas, take this one away. It sounds super interesting.
Can we enlist AI to accelerate human-led work in alt text and audio description? Speakers: Carolyn DeRosier, founder and CEO, Scribely; Angela McIntosh, Senior Product Director for Accessibility, Warner Brothers Discovery; Moderator: Thomas Reed, host and producer, Read My Mind Radio.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you, SiteTech Global. In order to begin this conversation covering both image and audio description, I'll begin with my own personal image description. I'm a brown-skinned Black man with a smooth-shaven bald head, full neat beard sprinkled with salt and pepper, and I'm wearing dark shades and a burnt orange button-up shirt, and seated in my vocal booth, which has a beige-colored background. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'd like to welcome our panelists, Angela McIntosh and Carolyn DeRosier, and ask you each to introduce yourselves. So we'll start with Angela.
Hi, my name is Angela McIntosh. I am a white woman with long brown hair and some funky yellow beaded earrings, a black turtleneck, and a beige background behind me. And my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Carolyn?
Hi, everyone. Carolyn DeRosier, pronouns she, her. I'm a white woman with auburn hair and bangs, wearing a crew neck sweater and sitting in front of a whimsical wallpaper background filled with trees.
Awesome. So let's take a few minutes for each of our panelists to help set the stage for this conversation. So Carolyn, I'll start with you. Can you talk a bit about the current state of image descriptions on the web and the challenges associated in expanding that access?
Yeah, so as I'm sure we all know, millions of images are added to the web daily. maybe even hourly at this point. And most people know that alt text is required at this point, but we're not doing that great of a job at actually describing these images. We're actually seeing a lot of bad alt text out there on the web. And I define bad alt text as either missing, inaccurate, or incomplete in some way. And it's difficult to find statistics on this, but we do have the WebAIM Million study that tracks how we're doing at alt text on the top 1 million homepages over time. And for a while, we were doing better. Since 2019, we were seeing those rates go down and down and down. And unfortunately, now they're going back up again. And we have right now 58% of homepages missing alt text in 2023. And in terms of what's happening in the alt attribute, everything under the sun, right? I've seen it all. So there's some very SEO focused alt text out there where it's a string of keywords. We're also seeing a lot of formulaic alt text where either the adjacent text nearby is copied or it's somehow a formula. This plus this equals alt text, which of course is not descriptive. On social media, we're seeing some AI generated alt text. You might have heard maybe an image of this or an image from an account. So some form of just generic alt text that's added to the web there. And this is a real problem because it creates barriers to information access, which has tremendous impacts on research, education, just access to information in general, career opportunities, a huge impact there. And then exclusion in other spaces. If we can't access images, that really impacts social lives and access to resources, buying products online, and then of course entertainment. So my company Scribely is really focused on how can we fix this problem? How can we address this challenge? After all this time has gone by, we're still seeing these issues with alt text. So we're really focused on, well, how can we use different approaches, especially involving humans, to improve alt text on the web?
Awesome. Thank you. Angela, can you address the state of audio description and the challenges in not only expanding, but also assuring quality?
Sure. Audio description is one of my most favorite topics. A lot like Carolyn, we spend our time thinking about good, better, and best ways to describe things and how we can do this at scale. I work at Warner Brothers Discovery, which is an umbrella media company that is home to brands like Warner Brothers Pictures, Warner Brothers Television, HBO, Latin America, there's Max, there's Cartoon Network, there's TNT Sports, there's just any number of different content types. So as we think about where sort of the most important places to invest in audio description, it has been sort of a wild last 2 years. We went from roughly 1,500 hours of audio description to 7,500 hours in the last 2 years, and it's been absolutely a learning journey. There's been a number of challenges. One, we love the idea of AI and what it will bring to us in the future, but audio description itself, it requires a human being to actually not just describe what's on the screen, but describe what's on the screen that's meaningful to the plot. What moves the story forward? What's going to help someone understand the context of why a character is saying what they're saying? And the technology is just not quite there yet to really build meaningful scripts for audio description. So we're still absolutely in a human process of writing audio description scripts, casting voice talent, making sure that it's real people. And a big thing that matters to us is that the storytelling in the audio description matches the level of the storytelling that's happening on the screen. Warner Brothers have been some of the best storytellers in the world for the last 100 years. And so we hold a really high bar for the audio description, and it has to match that standard. So that's kind of where we are today.
All right, thank you. So I know the process of creating image descriptions is quite different based on the image, right? The level of detail, the familiarity with the subjects and setting of the image can all require a significant amount of research. So Carolyn, can you discuss the process or workflow in creating image descriptions and highlight those areas where technology can be of help?
Sure. So I love this topic. I love talking about process. When it comes to alt text, I like to think of it with, we have a process for content, and then we have a process for actual alt text workflows. And when it comes to the content, it's really important to make sure that alt text is succinct. And as Angela said, meaningful, also relevant here. And of course, contextual. That's a critical piece. The image changes based on the context, and really good image description all comes down to pretty much the purpose of the image and the message to the audience. What information is that image conveying? Why is it there on the page? So we really do a lot of work before any writing happens at Scribely, where we're thinking about, why is this image here? What is the role that it plays? And then of course, there's also different approaches that you take for different content types. The approach that we're taking for describing educational content is not the same approach that we're taking for describing memes, GIFs, internet pop culture. That's a very different tone and style. And we can really, adjust that because we have human writers that specialize in this area. And when it comes to actual workflows, different challenges than creating the content, because those are decided within organizations, or if individuals are content creators and publishing on the web. And there are a few different ways to approach alt text. Some are training internal teams and designating a group to actually write this content. And then others are hiring external vendors because they found that they just don't have the time and resources within their teams, or they're feeling this is a specialized task that needs external support. So based on those two approaches, there can be different workflow challenges. But I like to think about, like, how can we scale this, right? This is a big question when it comes to alt text. How can we scale workflows? And a few ways we can do that are thinking about alt text as being controlled at the source within a centralized repository, within an organizational ecosystem, or some sort of system, some place that we're storing and managing our alt text. We can also think about scaling alt text by thinking about where we're licensing images and getting alt text from the source. So is it possible that the image providers that we're licensing from, or the photographers, have already created alt text that we could reference or that we could repurpose and use? So a lot of the work that I do is to think about, how can we establish these systems? How can we put the plumbing in place to make sure that we're preserving, passing, and managing alt text efficiently, and also setting up these standard operating procedures within content creation workflows that involve alt text earlier on in the process, so that it's not an afterthought. And all of those kind of approaches where you're thinking about how to improve and how can we establish systems, that ultimately results in creating better alt text. So I think workflows are really interesting and great to explore. If you're an organization who's struggling to get alt text done, the culprit is often your workflows or your systems. So that may be worthwhile to actually dig into those.
I want to move to a workflow related problem that impacts the AD experience that we refer to as the pass-through problem. So this is a pretty common experience where a title has been described either when released in a theater, on a specific network, or even on the DVD. But when streamed on a different network or broadcasted, the AD is missing. Angela, can you tell us what Max is doing to help eliminate this problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually going to start with a real human story here, because it'll help ground us in, like, the complexity of what's actually happening in the background.
Yeah.
About a year ago, we had a mom reach out to us in New Zealand who was trying to purchase the movie 42 with descriptions for her son. And 42 was described in the United States and on, at that time, HBO Max. and she was baffled as to why it wasn't going through iTunes. And there's a person on my team who absolutely was like, I'm going to get this kid this movie. And so he started to sort of traverse internally what systems deliver to Macs, what systems deliver to other distribution endpoints within our company, and how can we make sure that audio description is a track that's always included inside the company to the distribution endpoints. And that one exercise really was eye-opening for us. I think, Thomas speaks about the pass-through problem almost as if everybody knows about it. But there were a lot of sighted people in the company that were, frankly, we just didn't really understand what was happening. And so that was a big eye-opener for us about a year ago. One thing that we have started doing is making sure that we're that we're attaching audio description to the products and distribution endpoints that we own and are responsible for. But the larger challenge is when you license content from studio to studio, from streaming service to streaming service, what happens in the licensing deal is if it's not explicitly stated that audio description should be included, then the operational team who delivers it might not have an actual order to deliver it. Or they might have a note to deliver it, and the receiver might say, well, that's not in my technology spec to accept this particular track, and so give me everything but that track. And I think, we care deeply about this at Max, and certainly on my team, and I know that there are allies in each of these major media companies who care about this. What it's really going to take for this problem to get solved is for each of those media companies to agree that we always pass accessible tracks between each other in every licensing deal every single time. And that's not just audio description, but we really need to see that happen also for closed captions, for SDH, even for sign language assets, right? So we are doing a lot of talking within our team, but really the next and right step is for the industry itself to be talking together. And that's one of the reasons we're really excited to be here at this conference today. We're hoping that some of our friends and colleagues are also listening to these kinds of messages and thinking about what the industry could do. I think just handling that in the licensing would be game changing for everybody.
Awesome. Okay. We're gonna move to AI in a bit, right? So we all hear now Chat GPT, AI in general is the subject that everyone's talking about today. Educators, entertainment industry, business in general, are all trying to figure out its place in the industry. Angela, we'll start with you. Could you talk a little bit about the role of AI in AD? And as an addition, while it's not AI, I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about the role you see text-to-speech playing in the production of audio description as well.
Sure. So I will say that within audio description, for all the reasons that I mentioned earlier, we're really careful about implementing AI. When you're listening to a story that comes from one of our renowned storytellers, we don't want to hear a synthesized voice. We don't want to hear something described that's not meaningful to the plot or that's just sort of arbitrary noise, right? And so while we're interested in exploring this in a kind of experimental way, we're not really thinking about meaningful AI implementation of script writing or voice synthesis for audio description at this time. And that's just because, look, we care deeply about the customer experience. We want to make sure that the technology is really right before we roll it out. There are things that AI does incredibly well, and there are things that it still really stumbles on. So when we're thinking about innovations that would impact the blind and low vision communities, that would really meaningfully enhance their experience, most of our research around AI has really been about the content discovery part of the app. It's really been about how can we leverage the voice technology that exists today and something like Chat GPT to allow customers to really discover content on their own, to be able to say things like it would be very cool if I was co-viewing with my son and my son could say, "Hi, it's me and mom in the room. We're looking for what we should watch tonight. We kind of want to watch a comedy." And Max should be able to say back to you, "Well, I've got these 3 movies with audio description." And so those are the kinds of things that I think we're really interested in. As we started to develop text to speech technology on our apps, we really felt like a visual user is getting so many more pictures and so much more mood and tone and color in their experience. We sort of said, what if we completely scrapped the visual experience and thought about what the audible experience equivalent would be if you were only navigating through audio? And that's a place where AI can really shine for us. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about voice interfaces and thinking about how we can interject the music of a theme song into that voice interface so that you have the same sense of mood and tone when you're navigating the Max app. So yeah, we think AI has like a lot of potential in spaces like that, where it can give like very smart answers. It can serve up the right music. It can serve up the right recommendations, and really enhance the experience for customers.
Right. Carolyn, how are you thinking about AI and its place in the work you're doing at Scribely?
Yeah. So, of course, we have this problem, as I mentioned earlier, of millions of images being added to the web daily. And just looking at the amount of formulaic alt text and shortcuts being taken out there, clearly content publishers are looking for more solutions in this area. We need help with describing all of these images. The generative AI descriptions, I spent a great deal of time looking at testing it, different types of images and how it does it that. And we're definitely seeing it improving, but there is a lot of variability and some concerns from an alt text perspective. There's this delicate balance that we try to find when we're writing alt text, where we don't want to be too basic or generic, but we also don't want to be interpretive. And what I'm seeing happen a lot of the times is that it's one or the other, right? We're not getting enough descriptive detail, or it's just going, in the direction of being wildly interpretive and drawing conclusions based on what it can see, which can be very misleading if it's not picking up the right visual details, because then it's drawing conclusions from false information that's not actually there. So these hallucinations, as we refer to them, at these full confidence levels, feel a bit reckless to me, and definitely a threat to the trust and accuracy of information on the web, which is ultimately very important. So my perspective on AI is that despite this technology, we still have an accountability to the images that we publish. And the alt text absolutely needs to be right for accessibility purposes. But there are opportunities, and it's exciting. And we should be paying attention to, how this technology is advancing and collecting data and doing research on how it's improving over time. There could be opportunities to speed up the writing process. I definitely see that. Or incorporating context, which is always a challenge. How do we describe this image in this context? Which may free up more bandwidth for human writers to actually focus on more complex imagery or content that we would consider high stakes, right? Like this is very, very important to our brand or our message. So we could work in collaboration through kind of like a hybrid approach where we're using generative AI for some images that we can really trust it to describe and not using it for others. So definitely paying attention to all of the advancements here and how we can incorporate this technology into our work at Scribely.
Okay. So when it comes to AI and technology in general, it's understandable that many people become concerned that the technology will eliminate the human involvement. Yet I see some real potential in AI enabling more participation from the blind community. Carolyn, we'll start with you, Carolyn. Can you take some time to share your thoughts on how your company can include more people who are blind or have low vision into the creation process? And what steps you're taking to make it happen?
Yeah. So first of all, we have our internal image guidelines that that are kind of like our our central focus, what we use to create the philosophy, the approach behind Scribely's image description work. And we are always looking for folks who are interested in different subject areas or who are experts in those areas from the blind and low vision community to provide feedback to us on how we're doing at describing those specific types of images. So if you're really passionate about education or you're looking at like comic book art or something and really care about that improving, we'd love to hear from you and focus on those specific subject areas. When it comes to AI, Scribely is definitely in the territory of collecting data and doing research at this point on how are these generative AI descriptions compared to human generated descriptions or some sort of combination between generative AI and human descriptions. And we're looking at what is the output? What do we like about the descriptions from each one of those categories? So I'd really love to hear from anyone who's interested in getting involved in that research, either as a consultant or as a participant in a study. And please reach out to Scribely to get involved with that.
Awesome. Angela, same question. How is Max, including more people who are blind or have low vision into the process?
That's a great question. From our perspective, there really can never be enough blind involvement in any given project. I think when we start out thinking about new features or evaluating the feature sets that we have, we start with rounds of research. Where we reach out to the blind community, we ask a structured set of questions, and then we design around what the community needs. In addition to research, we also have internal beta teams of employees that have various diverse ability sets that can test for us. And so that's another way. I think in the future, we would love to have more consulting and more input. I think we also listen on social media. So you might be in a group that you think is just talking to other people, and there's a bunch of us listening to hear what you'd like. So in any kind of public forum, please feel free to speak up. And then I'll just echo what Carolyn said. We struggle to get enough of that voice into the work. We don't get a lot of feedback through customer service. We don't get a lot of help requests. So anytime you want something, I'm telling you, LinkedIn, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, DM me at any time. We would love more involvement, and we're happy to take questions, feedback, suggestions, because there's sort of an old mantra in the community that says, nothing for us without us. And it's something that's really a central tenet of our team. So we'd love to have more blind involvement.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I think we hit everything there. So I want to thank Angela and Carolyn for a great informative conversation. And as I understand it, you both are scheduled for Q&A sessions. So I hope our audience will take advantage of that opportunity to ask you all questions. You might see me there with a couple of questions too. So I just want to say big thanks to you all, and big thanks to SiteTech Global for the invitation to participate and spreading such good information to the public. I think that's a fantastic thing. So I'm Thomas Reed, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you, Thomas, Angela, and Carolyn. Well, folks, believe it or not, we are about to hear the last of our sessions, and it is about AI. John, you want to cue us up?
Sure. This session is entitled Envision: What Happens When Smart Glasses Really Get Smart? Using the Google Glass platform, Envision found a market with blind users who value a hands-free interaction, and the experience only got better with the launch of scene description AIs in the past 2 years. But what's really changed the game for Envision is generative AI and the tantalizing possibility of a multimodal AI that's more like an all-around personal assistant, helping not just with scene and object recognition, but much more. Our moderator is Joe Devon, a technology entrepreneur and web accessibility advocate. He co-founded the Global Accessibility Awareness Day and serves as the chair of the GAD Foundation, focusing on promoting digital accessibility and inclusive design. He is also a careful student of AI. Immediately following this session, Kartik Mahadevan will be available to take questions live in a breakout session.
Over to you, Joe. Bring it home with this last session.
Envision. What happens when smart glasses get really smart? Speakers, Kartik Mahadevan, co-founder, Envision. Moderator, Joe Devon, entrepreneur and accessibility advocate.
Thank you, Alice. It's my great privilege today to introduce Kartik Mahadevan, who is the CEO and founder behind Envision and the groundbreaking work in AI and accessible technology. Kartik, can you just tell us a bit about yourself and your company?
Yes, sure. Hi, Joe. I'm Kartik. I'm the co-founder of Envision. At Envision, we build AI-based software to help people who are blind or have a low vision independently access the world around them. It started with a smartphone app, but over the years, we have evolved to a smart glasses-based solution. So with just a tap of a button, people can access all kinds of information that would otherwise be inaccessible to them.
Great. And can you share a bit about the traction that you have with the company, and are things going the way that you envisioned, or have you had to pivot a little bit based on seeing how the reception was?
I think each year there's a a whole bunch of new insights and learnings to catch up with. This whole thing started as a student, a project. So when we started, the intention was not really to build the kind of a company that we have today. So each year has been been a learning for us. On the app front, we're doing incredibly well. We have over 100,000 monthly active users of the app around the world who do use this app for all kinds of incredible use cases in their everyday life. The smart glasses, I think, is still a new experiment, sort of like a venture for us. We have sold over 2,000 of them all over the world. So we are getting a lot of very useful and insightful insights on that as well. And the big hope is that as these glasses become a lot more accessible to people around the world, the application and the applicability of it also increases.
Wow, those are some impressive numbers. I'm just curious, how many people do you have in the company to support all of these users?
So we are 15 people in the in the company. It's mostly based in the Netherlands, but we also have folks all over the world who work for us as well.
Cool. So before we dive deeper into Envision, let's just chat a bit about AI safety, because it's been a big concern of a lot of the AI luminaries out there. There's been some talk of legislating in different ways, for example, making it a little bit harder for open source models to just push out this powerful technology. And this recently culminated in some serious boardroom drama, as most people know, where OpenAI's CEO was fired, then 6 days later was rehired. I'm just curious, where do you see things? Do you think that we should regulate AI, and how do you see the open source versus the big tech companies providing the foundational technology? Where do you think the safety concerns lie, and how we should handle it?
Yeah. I think there's always a balance, like in things like this. Of course, there is a need for, like a regulation and a safety aspect, but it shouldn't step into the realm of over regulations where you just squash out any scope of innovation, right? So I think it is a fine like balance that has to be built, maintained. And I think the like a way to achieve that is through education and awareness. I think a lot of people who are doing regulations are probably not aware of exactly what they're regulating, right? Because this whole AI like landscape is evolving so fast that even for people like us who are in the business don't really understand a lot of the things that's going on. So I can imagine how it could be a bit scary or daunting for the regulators. So I think there is a need for people who are building this tool to do a better job at educating and spreading awareness of exactly what they're building, so that it can be regulated but appropriately, so there isn't any aspect of over like regulations. And when it comes to open source and a company job building stuff, I think over there also it's always going to be a balance, like it has always been when it has come to development of any kind of technology, be it operating system or the internet or anything. I think they'll always sort of go hand in hand. The big companies are the ones who have the data at the moment, like they are the ones who have over the years been able to sort of mine all this data that's available, and like a model is just as good as the data, and I don't think open source can like compete on that front. But there are other fronts where open source is a lot more useful in the way it's working. So I think it's always going to be like be a combination. So an ideal outcome is that they're both in operate in a complementary way instead of operating in like a competing way, I would say.
That's interesting what you're bringing up here about the data. The data is really the moat, isn't it? And so when you are building technology, if you're an enterprise company, you can take that combination of your data, and then do you build on top of open source, or do you build on top of one of the big tech companies' foundational models? Like what is the better path to take?
Yeah. So I would say for a company like us, right, like who are just starting out and are building stuff, like we pick the best, that's out there, from the perspective of a customer, right? Because that's like the people who we're serving, that's the people who are going to be like paying us. That's where our our revenue comes from. So when there is a decision making a process within Envision as to which of the model that's out there we need to pick and use, we do like a test and we pick the one that that actually is the best of the lot. And sometimes it happens to be an open source ones, that actually is doing a much better job as like compared to something from big tech, and sometimes it's the other way around. So I think this kind of like growth is actually super like helpful for like folks like us who actually are building applications on top of these tools, because as these tools start to exist, we sort of actually have the freedom to pick the best and offer the best to the customers at the end of the day.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, one of the big problems that we have, and a part of what people are complaining about on the safety, is the hallucinations. It introduces liability. It can lead people down the wrong path. How do you think that they should be handled? And do you think that it's ever going to be a solved problem? And what I mean by that part of the question is, sometimes there's facts, there's that maybe you can tell, and then there's sometimes where there's opinions where you have different perspectives. And are we trying to go too far if we say eliminate all hallucinations when there might just be conflicting opinions? So how do you think it should be handled?
Yeah. No, I think like hallucinations is a part of the technology. So the technology, it comes with both the good and the bad, and one of the bads is the hallucinations aspect of it, and it really stems from the fact that we don't really understand how these these sort of like neural networks like they work, right? We don't really understand exactly so how they operate, other than the fact that they're just predicting the next word in a sentence. So I think we will probably not be too good at understanding how they work in like short term, and as long as we don't understand how they work, there will always be issues like hallucinations. But that does not mean that it cannot still be a helpful tool for us, right? I think like a good example is ChatGPT itself, right? So ChatGPT you hallucinates a lot, right? Depending on the prompt you give it and stuff that you ask it, there is always hallucinations that is a part of it, especially if you're trying to ask it for something something that is a factual. Your ChatGPT is not a tool to go for factual stuff. You might be be better off going to like Wikipedia or something like that. But there are so many other very incredible use cases of ChatGPT where you're okay with the hallucinations part, where you're okay with it sort of not being 100% accurate, but still actually having an incredible, immense use. And that's exactly how we see it when we're trying to incorporate these tools for our applications for increasing accessibility, right? Like it doesn't always have to get things 100% are right. Or sometimes even an 80% accurate information is a better thing for a user who has a 0% information at at the moment. So I think what's important is that people should be aware of it, that hey, there is a possibility that these models will sometimes hallucinate, will sometimes talk about stuff that is not that is not actually like there in front of you. And as long as you have that awareness, and as long as you take every output from this AI with a pinch of salt, I think it's good, because then you can actually make the decision as to how much you want to actually put your faith in like output from an AI or not.
Yeah. And what's your experience been with the drift of LLMs there? Like lately, I found it very frustrating dealing with the requests to ChatGPT or DALL-E 3. The quality is all over the place. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple of days that it's gotten lazy. I even joked that ChatGPT has quiet quit, didn't like what was going on with the boardroom drama, and now it just literally says, I don't want to code, I don't want to answer your question, look it up yourself. There's been some interesting stuff. How hard is it to build when you see this drift where you don't have a consistent type of responses and you constantly have to update the prompting behind it?
Yeah. I think it's exciting, right? Like it's, I think there's I think it's sort of like, I think if you sort of plot the development of LLM or a generative AI on a chart, there will be ups and downs. It will have spikes, but when you zoom out, it's still all going up, right? The amount of like in terms of the capabilities of this AI, it is still going up, even though there are spikes up and down in like the short term. So I think that a bigger picture is what we are very excited about. That if you really zoom out, the amount of like progress and a growth we have achieved in a generative AI just in this year is immensely more than all of the past decade sort of put together, right? That even a fact that we have something like a GPT, a vision that can actually give you such a description on the basis of an image, while 2 years back Envision was struggling with an AI which will only give it like a sentence, but even that would not be accurate, right? So much of a progress has happened. So we are okay with sort of like there being a bit of like fluctuations as we like tinker with this technology and tool to optimize it. But I think we should be so happy about like the progress that has been made in such a short period of time. I think there will be the short time spikes up and down, but I think over a long enough timeline, this would be a period of immense progress in terms of what AI has been able to achieve.
Yeah, and speaking about that progress, Ray Kurzweil is looking really good right now. He kept telling everybody that you've got this exponential growth and our brains can only think about things as a linear growth. And the past year has certainly proven out that we're just seeing incredible improvements. And you've got the hardware and the software on all these different layers where the growth is rapid. Are we getting to the point where AI assistants like the glasses that Envision has, that we're going to have an angel on our shoulder that's going to be personalized to our own needs and wants and desires and just sit on our shoulder and guide us through life?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly like what Envision is building at this moment. If you were to ask me the same question in the beginning of this year, like my answer would be, like yes, in about like 3 to 5 years, I think that is what we'll be able to achieve. But as of now, like my answer is that this is achievable, like now. this is achievable with the technology that's available as of today, and that's what Envision is building. It's building these a personalized visual assistants that sort of understands you as a personality. It understands you. It understands the kind of stuff that you need. It understands sort of how you like your information. It understands a lot about you. So it's not just a general AI that you interact with. It's something that is really, really like personal to you. And it has a broad enough understanding of the world and the visuals ahead of you to be able to filter that information and offer that to you, you in a way that is actually that is like digestible to you. So we always used to use this as a metaphor earlier, that it at like some point it'll be like having a bird on like your shoulder that you can talk with, but it feels like a reality today, and it has happened in such a fast sequence of time that having that kind of a bird on your like shoulder that you can interact with and ask for assistance is actually something that will happen like right now instead of in like 5 years.
Yeah, and what I liked in your website, so transformers were one of the big changes, leaps forward, and I like on your website how you're describing that that Envision is taking the environment and transforming or translating it into a spoken format. You're taking the visual and making it, just translating it sort of to another language. Daryl Adams, the head of accessibility for Intel, he really described that that's what our future is going to be: personalized artificial intelligence that gives you the information you need. Because if you're blind, you have a very verbal life. If you are deaf, your life is very much visual. And if you're deafblind, maybe even haptics. Do you see haptics, AR, VR, or mixed reality, whatever is the hot way of referring to it now? Are you seeing that being a part of it too? Robotics as well? Like, what other technologies are going to be layered on top of AI and all of these transformers? What's the form factor?
Yeah, so it's basically sort of two big things that Envision is putting like bets on, right? Like a first thing is AI, especially generative AI. The way it has grown in the past 2 years, we're putting a bet on that it's going to continue that kind of a trajectory, and it is going to still have that explosive like growth over next year. I think we're still just looking at the tip of the iceberg as to what's possible with the kind of AI that we're building today. So I think there is a big sort of growth happening in sort of the AI world. But there's another technological sort of progress that's actually starting to take off, and I think like next year is going to be a big like year for that. Is actually going to be like wearables, right? Especially a wearable cameras are actually going to make a big splash in the next couple of years. We are already seeing early like hints of it with like Meta partnering with a Ray-Ban, and they have these Ray-Ban smart glasses. We have this humane pin, which is like which has a form factor of a pin that you actually have on you, and all of these are very much betting on actually having AI as a part of these are like smart glasses. Apple has like put its I would say hat in the ring with like a Vision Pro, which as of now is a big and a bulky like headset. But if you do extrapolate that, okay, now every year Apple is going to iterate on that and improve, you can actually extrapolate how in the next like 3 years Apple will probably have like a lightweight headset that they're going to go into, right? So there is a resurgence, and then there is a growth again happening in the wearable I would say hardware space. And I think when you do like combine a wearable or like hardware with a generative AI, the combination of these two is exactly what's going to unlock that kind of like parrot in like shoulder kind of a feeling actually like for you. It's not going to be on your phone. It's not going to be something you have to like take out of your pocket and fiddle with like before you actually have access to the information. The access to information is going to be instantaneous, and that is only possible if there is a wearable that's always on you that you can just speak and engage with on a constant basis.
Yeah. And the form factor is super interesting and challenging. I always thought in my own head, the benchmark for me for when we've really reached that AI assistant level is when a system will know every bit of food that you've eaten, been able to tell you how many calories you have ingested, because it really understands your environment to the tune that it knows every bite. But if you don't, I think glasses is probably a good form factor, but as someone who got the surgery to get rid of glasses, I don't want to be stuck with glasses for life. Is this going to be a brain implant one day? Is like the Tab, the founder of Tab, which is similar to the Humane pin, he felt that their mistake was making it a pin that's easy to pull off. People know that's a $700 item. They could pull it off because it's a magnet, that maybe a necklace is better. What do you think is the best form factor for a wearable?
Yeah. I think it's going to be a spectrum to begin with. I think everybody will have a personal preference for this. I think there will be people who will prefer a glasses kind of, like a form factor, because when something is on your head, it is so much easier to orient with your head. If you want to look at something specific and look for that information, it's a lot more easier to look around with the head. It's a lot closer to your like mouths. If you do want to have like a mic in it, it's just like a form factor that makes sense. But at the same time, there will be people who will be like, hey, I don't want something on my face, because when I talk to people, I don't want them to be looking at a camera on my face. I want them to be looking at me, right? So there will be people who will be like, hey, I am okay if it's a pin on like my chest. Or there'll be people who will be like, hey, I want it as a necklace. There might be people who will be like, I want it on my watch, something that I can actually have it on a wrist. So I do believe that there will be a spectrum of different pieces of like hardware, and I think different people will gravitate towards like different kind of like form factor, which actually is a feature I'm super excited about, because I'm sort of getting bored of everybody having a phone that looks the same now. Everybody has like a rectangle in their pockets. So I'm actually excited about us exploring the industrial design of having all of these different kinds of like like wearable that's out there. But I think there will be probably a spectrum of these to begin with. Eventually, I think after a decade or so, we might sort of settle on a few that everybody agrees is the most comfortable option. But I think we are entering into a decade where everybody every year will have a new kind of a form factor that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, really excited for it. So now let's focus a bit on accessibility. What does the future look like for accessibility when you have a device that's going to be able to read a web page or an app and interact with it? Do we need accessibility subject matter experts anymore? Is it going to matter how a website is, what an ARIA label is, what the code looks like under the hood when the AI is just figuring it all out? What is it going to look like?
Yeah. I think there could be a trend that we start to just see, is that instead of people optimizing their tools, their websites and everything for all of these different kinds of screen readers or your magnifiers and things like that, there might be a trend that could start where people are optimizing it for AI, right? They're optimizing their websites for an AI to be able to access it in like the most easiest way. Very similar to how now every like website, it has like a like a robots.txt file, so that a search engine can scroll it easily and take the information like for it. There probably are going to be a similar embeds, maybe a visual embed in every like website, so that it's easier for an AI to be able to access the website and offer it in a personalized, accessible way to a user, right? So if I am a user who wants everything on a web page spoken out to me, and if my AI understands that, it is going to like look for that in the website and just speak out everything to me. But if I'm a person who only wants to have like the minimal information, then I can also like use that as a verbosity like settings for me. So I think that might be a trend we might start to see, where like a lot of these websites, instead of trying to like make it accessible to every kinds of like software, they might just make it accessible to AI, and then the AI can be a middleman to translate a website in a way to a person in the end.
Yeah, it sounds like almost a different kind of API for AI. which would be pretty easy to do because of how it works.
Yeah, I think it'll be like an AI centered a design instead of like a human centered a design. We're gonna design your websites or your stuff that are optimized for an AI to use instead of for like a human to use.
Yeah. Interesting times ahead for the good and the bad. So we have about 1 minute. I could talk to you for hours, but we have only about a minute left. So I'm going to leave you, have you leave us with some final thoughts and also how to contact you or pick up the Envision app or glasses.
Sure. You can reach out to us from our website, letsenvision.com. That's LETSENVISION.com. You can download our app on the App Store or the Play Store. The app is available for free for everyone. We do have these glasses that you can also just purchase from the website, or if you have a distributor available locally, they can also actually offer you these glasses. There's a lot of exciting developments under the hood that we'll be launching in the new year. So if you are somebody who wants to keep up with all of these AI developments, you should definitely stay in touch with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks everyone.
All right, that is a wrap for SiteTech Global 2023. I hope all of you enjoyed the show as much as we did.
What's pretty incredible is how far we've come in just 4 years. Who would have guessed back in 2020, the first year of SiteTech Global, that we would be hailing driverless taxis? Never mind looking forward to pilotless autonomous copters. And then there's the incredible rise of generative AI and our ability to actually ask AI questions about a visual setting. There are also tantalizing possibilities of an AI assistant that can span many types of tasks in our daily lives.
I am so proud of SiteTech Global and Vista Center for presenting us with these amazing innovations, insights, and the people behind them.
One important note before we sign off, all the sessions from today and yesterday will be published on YouTube, along with transcripts. We will send everyone an email who is registered when they are ready.
So that's it, folks. From me, Alice Turner, and John Giddings, your hosts for this year. I am so proud of SiteTech Global. Next, we're going to bring on the CEO of Vista Center, Corey Lyle, to wrap us up. Okay, Corey.
Thanks, Alice. You've been a terrific host. You more than filled the shoes of your predecessors. In fact, I think you've created a new high bar for hosting an event like this. Thank you so very much. Hi, everyone. This is Corey Lyle again. I'm the CEO of the Vista Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. That was an amazing conference. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. As a reminder, we chose to make this event free to all attendees because we believe that everyone should have access to SiteTech Global's programming, regardless of their socioeconomic means or where they live in the world. That being said, this event is also a fundraiser for the Vista Center, and we're very grateful to the many sponsors and benefactors who have stepped forward to cover our costs. We are encouraging attendees to make donations to support the Vista Center. As a nonprofit, we provide our services for free to thousands of people we help each year. So if you can, please make a small contribution. You can find the donate button on the top navigation of the SiteTech Global website. I'd like to say a few thank yous before we pull the virtual curtain. This event would not have been even close to possible without the amazing crew of volunteers who helped put it together. So let me deliver a few heartfelt thank yous. The creator of SiteTech Global and executive producer Ned Desmond has been a joy to work with, and Vista Center owes him a big debt of gratitude. Our marvelous host and Vista Center leadership team member Alice Turner, our designer and developer Dimitri Paperny, principal at Cohere Studios, the video production team under Tito Hamzi, the principal at Sonol Media Group, and his colleagues Mitch Eason and John Murillo, and the all-around event whiz and program coordinator Jackie Delatorre, Thank you so much, Jackie. We couldn't have done it without you. And a special thanks to our brain trust that helped guide Ned and all of us throughout the creation of the SiteTech Global programming. UC Santa Barbara Professor Roberto Manducci, Larry Goldberg, Sukriti Shatta, and Meta's Matt King. And last but not least, I'd like to thank our amazing sponsors who stepped forward to support Vista Center and SiteTech Global in a meaningful way. Waymo, Salesforce, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Envision, Be My Eyes, iSenpai, Foundation Fighting Blindness, and also our private supporters, the Ron Conway family, the Rose Time Foundation, the James and Edith Spain Foundation, and Satjeev Shahil. Thank you once again. Your support not only makes SiteTech Global possible, but it also helps sustain Vista Center and all we do to support blind and visually impaired people through their vision journey. So enormous gratitude in my heart. I sign off now until next year. Thank you again for attending SiteTech Global.
Thank you for joining SiteTech Global 2023. We'll see you next year. Thank you for joining SiteTech Global 2023. We'll see you next year. Thank you for joining SiteTech Global 2023. We'll see you next year. Thank you for joining SiteTech Global 2023. We'll see you next year. Thank you for joining SiteTech Global 2023. We'll see you next year. Thank you for joining SiteTech Global 2023. We'll see you next year. Thank you for joining SiteTech Global 2023. We'll see you next year.